This meeting will now come to order. This is the December 11th, 2012 meeting of the Town of Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. First item we have are meeting minutes for November 27th, 2012. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Thank you. A motion to approve by Commissioner Wagner, seconded by Commissioner Jacobson. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved. Next item is this is our organization meeting. Therefore, we must have an election of officers. I'd open the floor to nominations for chairman.
I'll nominate Brian LeClaire.
Thank you. There's been a nomination, Brian LeClaire for chairman. Is there a second?
Can I second that?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations for chairman? Hearing none, all in favor of the nomination of Brian LeClaire for chairman signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. I'll now open the floor for nominations for vice chairman. Commissioner Suter.
I'll nominate Seth Barris.
Thank you. It's been a nomination of Commissioner Barrett. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been seconded. Commissioner Jacobson. Are there any other nominations for vice chairman? Hearing none, all in favor of Commissioner Barrett for vice chairman signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Commissioner Barrett. I'll now open the floor to nominations for secretary of the commission.
I'll nominate Richard Jacobs.
Thank you. It's been a nomination of Mr. Jacobs. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jacobson. Any further nominations or other nominations for secretary? Hearing none, all in favor of Commissioner Jacobs for secretary signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Congratulations, Mr. Jacobs. Next item on the agenda are the schedule of meetings. We've all been presented with a proposed schedule for 2013. As typical, we have right now 2 meetings scheduled for every month with the exception of November and December 2013. We may end up adding meetings as we've had to do in the past. Obviously, does anyone have any questions, comments, changes to any of these meetings? The location of the meetings?
Yes.
Can I move to have the meetings relocated here for the colder months?
I second that.
You can.
I didn't hear.
Commissioner Wagner has queried whether for the colder months in the year we can have the meetings moved to this venue rather than McKinley School.
Oh.
McKinley's air conditioned, and that's why a number of years back this commission went to McKinley, having spent many years here. The suggestion was to move them here to this side of the town for at least the winter months and then perhaps the warmer months at McKinley. You could so move that our schedule be amended to indicate that, subject to availability of this room.
And I second it.
We could look at it if you want to define for us what the colder months. At what point do you want to move back to McKinley?
October to
Through March,
April.
April.
Well, the indoor dining period.
Yes, exactly.
Opposite of outdoor dining.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll check into it.
Yes, Commissioner Suter.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I think another issue is acoustics. I think we hear better in this room
Yeah.
than in McKinley.
Totally
No, I mean,
agree.
it's
Competing
not just
motors
location.
or air ducts or anything else. And it's a smaller room.
And I agree. The other nice thing is the lights in here work.
Yeah.
McKinley, those lights, the flickering that we have to deal with, the on-off, it's tough to read. I mean, most of us I could read without my glasses here, as most of you can, I see. Without reading glasses, it's bright enough to see the information, which is helpful. So we will endeavor to then, amend it as best we can to be in this room.
Thank you.
Those months. Other than that change, are there any other changes to this?
I mean, I think we all, with the staff, look into that, the availability and that type of thing. They made it all have some perspective since they used this room for years before we moved 9 years ago. And if there's any other drawbacks we're not aware of, having been here for only a few minutes, I have no problem with the venue in terms of location or getting here or room, availability of the, for the, to seat the public, but just let them check it out. If it works out,
We will try to accommodate the commission in that regard.
Thank you.
I think we're okay with the April vacation. That's always a question that comes up. I believe this is our April vacation the week of the 15th or around the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. You haven't, does anyone have the April school vacation?
We checked. It does
Not
not
clear the
conflict.
vacation. Thank you. and there being no February vacation, that problem is solved. We avoid the holidays, I believe we've checked that. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the schedule of the proviso that we will, if appropriate, change the venue in certain months to Riverfield from McKinley School.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jacobs seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the schedule of meetings as such, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you. At this time, being the organizational meeting of this body, I'm required to remind the commissioners of something I remind you of every year that has to do with the Freedom of Information Act and the town ethics policy and code. As you know, we have to comply with the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act, which governs everything from noticing meetings to the agendas of meetings to the minutes from meetings, which this commissioner does comply with. We have regular meetings. There could be a special meeting or an emergency meeting, and we will at all times, as in the past, comply with the Freedom of Information Act and all applicable state statutes and/or town charter regarding noticing of our meetings. We will also comply with the statutes of the Freedom of Information Commission regarding posting of agendas, posting of minutes of the meetings, and making those available to the public. Also, I have to remind you of the Charter of the Town of Fairfield. Section 11.1 is the standards of conduct of elected officials. As you know, the highest standards of ethical conduct are required by all elected officials so that individuals may have trust and confidence in their form of government and in this commission. And all commissioners are reminded that we hold our offices for the benefit of the public. To be avoided are any conflicts of interest, including solicitation or acceptance of gifts, disclosing of any confidential information which we may obtain due to our position, and engaging in any business transaction or activity or having a financial interest which is incompatible with the proper discharge of our duties. Also, we must disclose any interest, private interest, as may reasonably tend to create a conflict. She'll make that disclosure, and she'll also disqualify oneself should that occur. And finally, fair and equal treatment is required as an elected officials of the town, we shall not use our position to gain or secure any special consideration, treatment, advantage, privilege, or exemption. And again, this is something that we, as chairman, remind all boards, commissions, and elected officials once a year at this annual meeting. Yes, sir. Mr. Jacobs.
If I might add to that, our meetings are on tape. They are available to the public. While the state only requires them to be kept for 2 years, now that we are digital, I see no reason why we don't direct staff to keep them for now on. There is not a room problem storing a digital meeting. It is an MP3, it takes up very little space, and they don't have to be dumped every 2 years. At the end of 2 years, we can direct staff to hold on to them so that the public will have access if needed. Does that require a vote, Mr. Chairman?
Motion.
A motion?
We can make a motion to that effect. That we make a recommendation to staff that we keep meeting minutes,
Tapes.
Recordings.
Recordings.
Meaning recordings electronically without deletion after the 2-year period. Commissioner Suter?
Yeah, I just wonder, I think we should consult with staff, though. There may be some technical problems that we're unaware of, maybe a problem that's not technical that the staff thinks we ought to know about, and I think we should get some feedback from staff before we impose that on them.
Mr. Devancho?
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. I don't, off the top of my head, other than the tapes, put those aside. I mean, for the MP3 players, I don't anticipate a problem, but if there is, I'll bring it to your attention.
Thank you. I mean, I agree, Mr. Jacobs, it could be very useful. We frequently talk about prior applications, being able to go back and look at something or think about something that comes up again. So, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you. Next item is 2221 Cross High. I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Devancho.
Greater Bridgeport, you want to?
Oh, yes, thank you. What is your official title? The Greater Bridgeport
Regional Council.
Regional Council. At this time, I just want to note for the record that Commissioner Wagner has been a member representing Fairfield in this body at the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council, and his term, if you will, has now expired, so I'd like to reappoint him and state on the record that I'm reappointing him back to represent us again on the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council, and thank him for his commitment and attendance at those meetings and representation of Fairfield at them. Just want to note that for the record, his reappointment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Next item is 2221 Cross Highway, request of Louise and Darren Antill for a 50% release of a $25,820 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in a AAA zone. Mr. Wendt?
This is a two-lot subdivision on Wellington Drive and Cross Highway. It was approved last year. 50% of the bond and improvements have been completed, and you have a report from our engineering department recommending 50% release.
Motion
One quick question on the memo we received. It talks about Wellington Drive and Cross Highway. Is that the same parcel, or is that for two different bonds that she's talking about?
It's the same parcel. The 221 Cross Highway is the address of the present dwelling that exists via a long rear driveway access from Cross Highway, but the property also had frontage on Wellington Drive.
Yeah.
And created a lot
Okay.
fronting
It's
on
the same.
Wellington.
It's one bond that applies to both of those
Correct.
locations. Thank you. I'm sorry, was there a motion?
I was going to say I'll make a motion to approve the release of the bond.
Thank you. Commissioner Kennelly has moved for the release of the bond. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs has seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the release of the bond, 2221 Cross Highway, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Next item, 1550 North Benson Road, request of Sarah Camerata for a 50% release of a $40,600 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone. Mr. Wendt?
This is a two-lot subdivision approved earlier this year at 1550 North Benson. This property also, you may recall, has frontage on Nutmeg Lane. The two lots are actually going to access Nutmeg Lane, and there was an extension of the cul-de-sac that has been recently built. You did not have it in your packet, but received today is a recommendation from engineering concurring that 50% of the work is complete and recommending 50% release.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this?
I'll move it for approval of the bond release.
Thank you. Commissioner Kennelly has moved for approval of the bond release. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Barrett has seconded. Is there any discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of the release of bond 1550, strike that. All in favor of the 50% release of bond for 1550 North Benson Road, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. This time we will review several new applications to recommend to public hearing. But before we do, I just noticed some people came in a few minutes ago. I'd just like to note for the record, there was a public hearing originally scheduled tonight in the fourth position, 145 Brookside Drive, a subdivision application of Brookside Acres LLC for 3 lots in an A zone. That application has been withdrawn by the applicant and is no longer before this commission and will not be heard tonight. Back to new items to recommend to public hearing. The first is 452 Brookside Drive, subdivision application of Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks for 3 lots in an A zone. Mr. Wendt?
This is a 3-lot subdivision. They're looking, if you're familiar with the Elks Club Lodge, this is the extreme northerly piece. They're looking to keep their existing building and facilities intact, but they're looking to carve off a couple of lots adjacent. If you're familiar with the site, there's some bocce courts in to the north of that to create 2 lots to help their economic situation.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this to refer this to public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs has moved this to public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jacobson has seconded. Is there any discussion?
Aye. Kennedy?
All in favor of moving 452 Brookside Drive to public hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. It's referred to public hearing. Next, 893 Sasko Hill Road, re-subdivision application of Bernard and Cynthia McDonald for 2 lots in a AAA zone. Mr. Wendt?
You may recall, you saw this a couple meetings ago, we made a preliminary recommendation on an open space fee for a two-lot subdivision. It is a re-subdivision, requires a public hearing. Now that they've got that feedback that you recommended a fee, they've made the formal application.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Move to public hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner has moved to public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Kennelly has seconded. Any discussion on this item? Mr. Suter?
Yeah, I better recuse myself from this vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Suter. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor of P 93, Sasko. I should note that you're on for Commissioner Suter, who's recused. All in favor of 893 Sasko Hill Road, re-subdivision application, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, item will go to public hearing. Next item to recommend to public hearing, 411 Bronson Road, re-subdivision application of Sharon Turner for 2 lots in an A zone. Mr. Nguyen?
This is just a parcel on the corner of Bronson Road and a cul-de-sac street called Broad River Lane that extends, this is south of the Sturgis Road bridge on Bronson. It's proposed for 2 lots. It is a re-subdivision, does require public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item?
Move to public hearing.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner has moved to public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kennelly has seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of moving 411 Bronson Road to public hearing, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, we'll go to public hearing. Next item to recommend a public hearing, 289 Hyundai Avenue, subdivision application of 289 Hunyadi Avenue, subdivision. Your Worship,
Pronounced Tanyati.
289 Hunyadi Avenue, subdivision application of 289 Hunyadi LLC for 2 lots in a B zone. Mr. Wendt?
It's just a lot that's large enough to be divided. It is, there was a first cut taken from this lot once before, so this would be a subdivision. I will note that this does not, by our regulations, require a public hearing, since it's only 2 lots and it's not a re-subdivision application. We put it on for recommendation. It is at your discretion, but recent history has shown that that tends to be the desire of this commission to hold a public hearing, so we sent it straight to recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a motion on this item? Commissioner Barrett?
I'll move to public hearing.
Thank you. So moved. Is there a second? Commissioner Wagner is seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just say, I agree
Barrett?
with staff, I don't think we've ever, might have had a subdivision application that we didn't allow a public hearing on, whether it was a subdivision or re-subdivision. The law doesn't require it, but traditionally we've had it, so
Agreed.
that's why staff put it there.
Thank
And
you.
I second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. Any further discussion by any member of the commission? Hearing none, all in favor of referring to public hearing, 289 Hunyadi Avenue subdivision, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We go to old business. We have 2 items on old business. The first, 129 Hillside Road zoning compliance application of James Thompson, architect, on behalf of 129 Hillside Road LLC to establish residential use on the 2nd floor of an existing building and related site improvements. It's in a neighborhood design business district. Public hearing 11/27/12. Expiration date 12/27/12. Present Commissioners Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, Alessi, and Parker. Mr. Devanczyk?
Yeah, just note for the record, there are 6 regular members voting on this.
That's correct.
Okay, as the Chairman mentioned, there was a hearing on this application. Basically, it's an application on behalf of 129 Hillside Road LLC for property located at 129 Hillside Road, which happens to be located in our neighborhood design business district. The occupancy of the property right now has consistently been a real estate office, hair salon on the 1st floor, and then other professional offices on the tenants on the 2nd floor. There's currently a building permit in place to renovate the building's exterior and interior of the 1st floor. The 1st floor will be occupied by a local real estate company. The exterior of the building is in the process of complete refurbishment with new windows, doors, roof, utilities, and wall finishes. The existing on-site septic system, as reported at the public hearing, has been abandoned and a new connection to the town sewer system has been installed. This proposed use in site improvement is basically subject to our section 12.5.5 of the zoning regulations, and they basically seek approval for residential use on the 2nd floor of this existing structure. The use would consist of a one-bedroom apartment, approximately 1,350 square feet in size. The proposed site plan improvements include designated paid parking consistent with the town requirements, provisions for appropriate emergency vehicle access, accessibility improvements consistent with the ADA requirements, a provision for appropriately located and screened trash receptacles, and conversion of an existing septic system, as I mentioned before, galleries into a rainwater detention system, capturing runoff from the majority of the impermeable surface on the property. At the hearing, the location of the trash receptacles and a natural gas generator were discussed. It was requested that it be confirmed that the stockade fence enclosure, first of all, included all four sides of the area be enclosed. If you remember, there was a discussion on the site plan that there was a boulder line around three sides, so it was confirmed, and the applicant did confirm that there would be four sides would be enclosed. Then there was a discussion of possible relocation of the area to other parts of the property. Issues of this, the need for additional paving area and/or difficulty with access were discussed. It was confirmed also at the hearing that the ultimate location of the generator, while considered an accessory structure and needs to meet the zoning requirements for setback for accessory structures, would be also subject to a building permit for its installation. Also, the issues of noise that would be regulated, they are regulated by the town ordinance, which is administered and enforced by the Fairfield Police Department. The conclusion on whether or not it was going to be removed was kind of up in the air. I think it ranged everywhere from the commission essentially punting on the location of the generator and allowing them to make their application to building permit, along with meeting our zoning requirements for setback, and also being reviewed for any noise issues. And as far as the trash receptacle, the applicant did seem that they would accept the condition to consider looking for another location for the trash receptacles and the generator, subject to the issues that they had mentioned as far as additional paving and access. That's pretty much what was presented at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Demetrio. Is there a motion by any member of the commission? Commissioner Jacobs?
Motion to approve with condition.
Thank you. And the condition being?
That the dumpster and the generator not be within 50 feet of a residential property line.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Jacobson has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacobson?
I'm sorry, was that?
Yeah, the motion was
50 feet of a residential property?
conditioned for approval that the dumpster and generator not be located within 50 feet of a residential property line?
Just want to make sure.
I don't believe they need to move it to accomplish that.
We can certainly discuss.
We'll
confirm the distance.
What do we discuss it?
Is there any discussion? Commissioner Jacobs?
When I looked at the map, it was 10 feet from a residential property line right now. 50 feet would put it on the other side of the driveway from when I looked at the map.
You're referring to what, Commissioner Jacobs?
That the generator was within 10 feet of the residential property line.
It's not. That northerly or that westerly property line there is not residential. There's a parking lot for the adjacent office building that's between that and the... I can't tell you from this map the distance of the property line. I can tell you the distance from the property corner to the closest adjacent residence is 150 feet.
I'm not discussing the residence.
But,
Yeah.
you know what?
The line of the property.
But I understand if you want no closer than 50 feet to the closest residential property line. Is that...
Yeah, that's his motion.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk? Commissioner Wagner?
Well, I would be interested to understand what that means as a practical matter on the map in order for us to consider the motion. Commissioner
I
Barrett?
would think we don't even make the motion with the condition. We know you're interested in that. We're going to talk about it. We'll work out what the amendment needs to be. Would that be the appropriate way to go? And we're going to talk about the generator and the location, everything. So rather than nail, I mean, you can make it like that. We can just change it later then. I mean, I think we're going to deliberate. We'll discuss back and forth. He can make the motion any way he wants, and we can always amend it later.
Right,
So-
we can discuss it with this amendment, and then if need be, we can, you can vote to change
Yeah.
the movement could change his motion.
Or the motion could be defeated.
Make me defeat, right, number of options. So does anyone wish to discuss this item as, with the condition imposed? Commissioner Jacobson, seconded,
Okay.
yeah. Commissioner Suter?
Yeah. I think the plan as it exists as to the building is unobjectionable. I mean, the regulation permits a mixed use. The apartment on the second floor does not exceed 50% of the square footage. The plan looks like a practical, workable, commercial and residential plan. The issues seem to be with the rear of the lot, and I know that for safety purposes, the generators have to be a certain minimum distance from the house because of the exhaust from the generator. The applicant also pointed out that in terms of the dumpster, in order for the truck to get in and maneuver in the back of the lot, the existing location was the best location on the lot for that. And if you move that location, it would impact the parking on the lot and perhaps reduce the parking. I mean, this is something we can discuss in more detail, but it seemed to me that those were sound reasons given by the applicant. Now, as to the distance from the property line, we're really talking about trying to reduce noise, and this is not a big lot. It's a relatively small lot. I'm not sure that there's a location on the lot that you can move the generator to that will make a significant reduction in the noise level, and setting aside the impact on parking and the safety implications. I don't think you can find a location that's going to greatly improve the sound level. And the whole issue of generators are not illegal, that's for starters. And secondly, they are going to screen it. There are other generators that have been permitted in the area. And we concluded at a previous hearing after a long discussion about proposed amendments regarding generators that the existing noise ordinances of the town should be sufficient to control noise. Short of a whole presentation by an expert or even two or more experts on this issue, I don't know that we can improve on the decision we made the last time on the issues involved here.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner?
So I appreciate Commissioner Suter's comments, and I would echo them. I think this is a very good application, and I don't believe that we should approve this with any conditions regarding the generator. The generators are allowed under our regulations. We have clear guidelines on property setbacks that need to be met. This generator is also on the plan to be a gas-powered and not gasoline or diesel, which is a much quieter version of generator. You know, I went back, I looked at it. I live in this area. I went back and looked at the plan again and the location of the garbage pad and so forth. I think that moving the garbage pad to the other side of the property would actually increase the noise and disruption of trash removal. Because as it is now, as the applicant explained, the trash can pull straight into the driveway, pick up the bin, and then pull straight out of the driveway. If it is moved, they have to do a K-turn. There's an issue of now we have to move parking spaces around, and other parking spaces may impact the ability of the trash pickup to effectively navigate around the parking lot. I do understand the concerns of some of the neighbors that came out, but I have to say that the vast majority of the comments were directed towards the existing generator that is on the adjacent property, and not the proposed generator on this property. There are a proliferation of unregulated generators throughout the area, And the concern that was raised, one particularized concern that was raised by the property owner that was along the area that Commissioner Jacobs is mentioning, remarked about how they were concerned with the fact that the office building adjacent is now being commercialized and being used, and that when they purchased their property, the office building was vacant, there were no lights, there was no activity in the parking lot, and now this is a disruption to them. You know, I can appreciate the increased activity results in increased noise and lights and such, but this is a neighborhood designed business district, and this is what we intend to have developed in this area. And we have advocated for the mix of commercial and residential repeatedly. We had a whole session on generators and whether we should add regulations around them and not. And Commissioner Suter is correct that we concluded that our existing regulations are sufficient and that it's really a noise issue that is subject to the town's noise ordinance. And that if there's a problem with the placement or the activity of this generator or any other, the adjoining neighbors can, you know, seek assistance from the police or other town offices. I really don't believe that the plan that's been put in front of us could be improved upon. And I would urge us not to impose what I consider to be an arbitrary condition of 50 feet from a property line. I don't understand the basis for that. I don't understand the analysis that went behind that. The property, it's not even an adjacent residential property line here. So I am not going to vote in favor of this motion with this condition, and I would be interested from staff to understand what the actual distance of the nearest residential property line and nearest residence is to the proposed plan of the generator. And I'll just close by saying that, you know, the generator is not even going to be installed now. It's not even subject to our approval. It's part of the building permit process, which they have to subsequently go through. And it's just, I don't think it's appropriate for us to be dealing with it in this way.
The staff, as Jim mentioned, we know, based on the information submitted for this application, that the closest resident building is 150 feet away from the location, proposed location. Other than that, we're not exactly sure whether, we do know there's a commercial parking lot adjacent to this property line, but we don't know how far back it goes. So, I mean, at a minimum, if that was going to be a condition, I would request that it be subject to a revised site plan to see if it's practical, first of all. But at that point, we would be able to determine where the 50 feet is. Right now, we don't know.
Well, particularly in light of that, I do not believe that the motion with the condition is appropriate or should be supported by the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs.
While I agree that it's a great application, it is exactly what we were looking for. And when we talked about generators before, they were in a completely commercial area or an area that was a neighborhood design district without neighbors adjacent to them. I saw this as a way of protecting the residential zone, not the neighborhood design district, but the residential zone, and a natural gas generator will automatically turn itself on once a week to test. So it is not oh, it's a generator, it's sitting there, when there's a storm it's going to run. It's going to run once a week.
That's right.
So it will be something that the neighbors will hear on a regular basis. When I looked at the drawings submitted and the residents were talking, I saw where they were pointing out as their property line. I took a ruler from that, instead of everyone saying, well, maybe we should move it to the other side of the driveway, or maybe we should move it here. I just said, well, if we do a 50 feet, we let them decide how they want to set up the driveway. I'm not telling them how to set up the driveway. I'm not telling them where to put the generator. I'm not telling them where or how to put the dumpster. I'm just saying it's away from the residents. It's away from a residential neighborhood. If it was in dead center in a neighborhood design district, I'd have no problem with it, because their neighbor would be a building. Their neighbor would be commercial. And in this case, it's not.
Mr. Wade?
In this case, the adjacent property is a parking lot. The residential neighbor is across the street, right?
They pointed out in the hearing that the one woman was saying that she was a corner in the back, that her lot was adjoining property.
It is.
That she's not the one from across the street. She has an adjoining piece of property to this property. It is a residence that was adjoining.
Yeah, I understand the person you're referring to, they do not abut this property. They abut the bank. The Chase Bank parcel is the corner lot. If you're on Hillside Road, or not Hillside Road, the cross street there, it's
Hill Farm.
Hill Farm.
Thank you, Hill Farm. They're the adjacent piece. They do not abut the corner of this property. The bank goes back another 30, 40, at least another 40 feet. And the 10-foot dimension that you're seeing on the site plan abuts a parking lot. So I have I printed an aerial photo for you that's sitting on my desk, and I had the engineering department give me a dimension from the corner of this commercial property to the house is 150 feet. To the residential property line, I can't tell you exactly, but it may very well be 50 feet as it stands presently. But it's certainly greater than 10. It does not abut this property.
10 feet is the setback to the property line, and that is in compliance with our regulations. And effectively, you are telling them where to put it, because this is a small parcel, and if you were to say 50 feet from, as you were considering it, 50 feet from the property line, which would be 40 feet internal to the parcel, the building's there are parking spaces in front of the building, you're effectively telling them where to put it by imposing that restriction, because there aren't alternatives. But I think that staff has confirmed my, at least the factual basis for my arguments.
Thank you. Mr. Baird?
Yeah, first of all, as far as the residential component goes, there was some discussion about that at the hearing, and that does meet our regulations. It's in compliance. If people don't want residential uses on second floors in neighborhood design, we need to change our regulations. It meets our regulations, so I'm in favor of that aspect of the application. As far as generators go, I think it was pointed out, and I pointed out that the applicant pointed out, staff, and I said that the generator did not need to be included in this application, but it was. And because it's on a plan, it's in front of us, it's part of the record, it's something to talk about. If the applicant had not included it, and just later on got approval of this and installed the generator, it would be subject to a building permit and the fact that it meets their zoning setbacks. And I just didn't want any conception of the public that we're sitting here approving generators. We're not. It doesn't come before us. Maybe it should, but it doesn't.
Now, that was part of my point.
Right. So it does not come before us. But it's on our plan, so it's something to consider as far as where the generators and trash receptacles should go and how well they're screened. I think it's on the plan. The applicant made a good point. Residential gas generators are completely unregulated. They're loud. During the recent hurricane, they ran for weeks. I could hear them in my house, with every door and window shut. I could hear it running all the time. That's just, they're loud, unregulated, and commercial generators are regulated. So I understand that point as well. I'm not sure about relocating it. I would ask that we have some condition about screening. It requires screening on all four sides of the dumpster and the generator. It's on the application. I think it's reasonable to require screening. I'm not sure about moving it. I think like Mr. Wagner said, it might be counterproductive to moving the trash receptacle over to the side. It doesn't abut residential properties, but we do have to consider it is in a neighborhood design district, is near, where people do reside. And So, I understand Mr. Jacobs' concerns about that. I'm just not sure about moving it, whether it's really, that effective, and if what we should do is really just make sure that it is appropriately screened. That would be what I would recommend.
Thank you, Commissioner Sudi.
I think the proposed screening is a stockade fence. And during the application we had a year or so ago for another generator in the same neighborhood, there's a lot of discussion about what proper screening was. I think that particular application had a metal enclosure of some sort. There was a lot of discussion as to what attenuation in terms of decibels that would achieve at a certain distance from the generator and so forth, and I forget the details of that discussion. And I'm not sure at this point that we are expert enough to impose a particular type of screening on this particular generator. I think that's beyond our level of expertise at this point. But in principle, it's a good idea. I just don't think that we can practically do it beyond having some kind of fencing around it.
Just to refresh the commission's memory, if you look at the plans, it doesn't talk to the actual enclosure of the structure, but it talks about stockade fence enclosure and also talks about the 8-foot-tall evergreen screening plantings that's on the plan also.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So there'll be trees that'll help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
Commissioner Wagner.
so the screens on the plan are that it'll be bound on all 4 sides by stockade fencing and 3 sides, including the property line side, as well as the, all 3 sides except that facing the parking lot will be screened with 8-foot evergreen trees. I believe that screening is appropriate, and I think if we did make it a condition, simply that screening be installed according to plan and maintained.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think we shouldn't just say, well, the generator's later, we'll deal with it later. I think since it's on the plan, if we just maintain a condition that the screening be according to the plan, I think if it's trees on 3 sides and a stockade fence on 4 sides, that would, you can't have trees where the trash gets picked up. I guess you can't screen it on all 4 sides. But I think that would be an appropriate condition. Not just, well, the generator really wasn't part of the application, so later on we find out it gets built and, there's not screening according to the plan. So
No,
I would be in favor of that.
Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I agree, and this is a sensitive issue, and I certainly don't want my remarks or our positions to be taken as as our being callous towards the needs and the sensitivities of the neighbors here. They're not. They're not. I considered this with due rigor, and we have regulations. This is in compliance. This is a very good application. This is a very good improvement to the building, the parcel, and the area. And so I think we either have this motion withdrawn or we take a vote and defeat it, leaving the floor open to a new motion.
Is there any further discussion by any member of the commission? Absent something by Commissioner Jacobs, we will vote on this. You will vote on this, and then
I think it would have been a little cleaner, my other comment is that it would have been a little cleaner to just make a motion to approve, have amendments proposed, and then vote on the amendments, and then vote on up or down application. That's just not the way it was done. That would have been a little cleaner vote.
Commissioner Jacobs, we haven't voted yet. Commissioner Jacobs is still free to withdraw his motion.
that is correct.
This way it'll be very straight on the record. The way we do it right now, everyone will know where everyone stands.
Mr. Clark,
Yes,
could you
Commissioner
reread the
Sudi.
motion as it stands?
The motion was to approve with the following condition, the condition being that the dumpster and generator not be located within 50 feet of a residential property line. Mr. Bass?
I can propose an amendment, right?
You can.
I propose we amend the motion to strike that condition. That's my proposed amendment.
Thank
I'll
you. Is there a
second that.
second? It's been seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? The amendment being to strike the condition attached to the original motion. Hearing none, I will call for a vote on that. Commissioners voting are Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner. I'm off, as are Alessi and Parker. Just to remind you that a vote in the affirmative is to strike that condition. It's not a vote to approve the application. At that point, the floor would still have on it a motion to approve, just with no condition. One can then move the question and vote on it with no conditions, or introduce an amendment to add another condition or conditions. That being said, all in favor of the motion of Commissioner Barrett? Was that seconded? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Commissioner
was
Barrett to remove the condition originally placed by Commissioner Jacobs and Jacobson, signified by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
That's 3-3 for the record. Nay was Commissioner Kennelly, Jacobs, and Jacobson, so the motion fails. The motion to remove the condition fails. So now we have the motion before the commission with the condition that the dumpster and generator not be located within 50 foot of a residential property line. And again, discussion, another motion, or a vote? Your pleasure.
Explain the vote.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we will now have a vote on the item. The item is to approve 129 Hillside Road zoning compliance application with the following condition. The condition being that the dumpster and generator not be located within 50 feet of a residential property line. Is there any final discussion on that item with that condition?
Who's voting on this?
Again, voting Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, Wagner, and Barrett.
And you're not voting?
I'm not, because I was at that hearing last week. I was out of town.
Well, we can,
I'm not voting.
So
I'm not voting.
Six.
Six.
Same 3-3.
Barrett, Jacobs, Jacobson, Kennelly, Suter, and
so
Wagner.
what happens in the case of a 3-3
A
vote?
3-3 vote does not constitute an approval. The item would not be approved.
So the motion would fail. Would that leave the floor open to a new motion?
It would.
What was that again?
Yes, the motion would fail. We can have the floor open to a new motion at that point.
That's fine.
That being said, all in favor of the application, zoning compliance application of 129 Hillside Road with the condition that the dumpster and generator not be located within 50 feet of a residential property line, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes are Commissioner Jacobs and Jacobson. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Commissioner Wagner, Kennelly, Suter, and Barrett. So the item is not approved. Are there any further motions? Commissioner?
No, Commissioner
Either way,
Wagner.
that's fine. I'll move to approve with the condition that the screening as shown on the plan be installed and maintained, that being stockade fencing on all four sides and 8-foot evergreens or greenery on the three sides as shown on the plan.
Thank you.
I'll second
If there's
that.
a second, the item's been moved and seconded. The item be approved with the condition that the screening is shown on the plan, and I'll paraphrase what's been in the record, be installed and maintained. That includes the stockade on 4 sides and the 8-foot evergreens on 3 sides. Any discussion of this item with that condition? Commissioner Jacobs?
Since the commission has seen fit not to want to move the generator and leave it up to the applicant, and since this is a very good application that is a benefit to the town and the neighborhood, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? Commissioner Jacobson?
I agree, this is a really good application. I will support it as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the application, 129 Hillside Road zoning compliance application with the condition as articulated by Commissioner Wagner and seconded by Commissioner Suter, that the screening as shown around the dumpster and generator be installed and maintained, and that would include both the stockade fence and the evergreens as shown on the plan. All in favor of the motion with those conditions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Item carries 6-0. Next item, 682 Commerce Drive, special exception application of Stephen Geller, for additions and alterations to establish a child daycare center in a designed commercial Commerce Drive District. Public hearing 11/27/12, expiration date 1/30/1/13. Same commissioners present and voting. Is there a, Commissioner Devanchik, I'm sorry.
Give you a quick overview of what was presented at the public
Please.
hearing. Bright Horizons plans to develop and operate a new child care center in the town of Fairfield, located at this property, which is 682 Commerce Drive. There is an existing 5,751 square foot building. The proposal is for a 4,660 square foot addition to create one 10,000 square foot building to house a child daycare center. And the lot will be regraded to accommodate addition and playground. Also, there will be a new dumpster enclosure, and the parking lot will accommodate 40 parking spaces, 2 accessible and 38 standard parking stalls. The existing building exterior will be demolished, or excuse me, interior will be demolished, and the existing windows will be replaced with new. Also, the exterior of the building will be updated and receive the clapboard finish, and that was there was some extensive discussion about that at the hearing. Bright Horizons new child care facility would accommodate 124 children, ages infant through 6, with programs designed for 32 infants, excuse me, age 6 weeks to 24 months, 32 toddlers, age 2 to 3 years, and 60 preschoolers, age 3 to 5 years. The new facility will be designed with 11 classrooms. The floor plan will also include a reception, lobby area, administrative offices, pantry, staff workroom, lounge area, and adult toilets, art studio, indoor movement matter zone, janitorial, laundry, and storage space. Per Bright Horizons program, 30 new staff positions will be added once the center achieves full enrollment. The center will operate approximately 11 and a half hours per day, Monday through Friday, with closures limited to the 9 federal holidays. Targeted hours for operation will be 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Actual hours will be defined based on actual demand parent scheduling. The new facility will include a 4,500 square foot outdoor fully enclosed play area. A 6-foot high rubber-coated chain link fence will enclose the play area. The play area will be subdivided into smaller areas via a 3-foot high rubber-coated fence to divide the places areas by age group. The play areas will be adjacent to the north side of the building. Children will have direct access into these play yards. Vehicular access to the center will be provided by a driveway from Commerce Drive. There was some discussion at the hearing about safety for access, the children in and out of the buildings. It was reported to the commission that all building accesses were reviewed and approved by the fire marshal for safe exiting during emergencies. However, there are finishes on the door that would not allow a child just to exit the property unsupervised. That pretty much was what was permitted at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Devanchik. Is there a motion? Commissioner Kennelly?
I'll make a motion to approve item 3B, the special exception application for 682 Commerce Drive.
Any conditions?
Why don't we just see as we go with both of my colleagues, just to save us a little time tonight, if that'd be okay. Not that I'm sure the public doesn't love hearing us go at length about these kinds of things. I'm sure they find it fascinating. But anyway, but no conditions right off the bat.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner
second.
Jacobson is seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I
Kennelly?
would just say this. This commission, under your leadership, Mr. Chairman, has spent, and with the great support of our staff, has spent a great deal of time in reimagining Commerce Drive. Our planning director has pointed out, I think, very well to all of us the impact of the long-term revitalization of Commerce Drive as being central to what really could be a future for, hopefully a spur for the kind of growth and development that would be a boon to Fairfield if it's done correctly. My sense is that something like this, though small, is exactly the kind of thing we want to see in the Commerce Drive area, because if we really do envision a different Commerce Drive, we're going to see this kind of a conversion. We're going to see a conversion from industrial to more uses driven by what eventually we imagine will be a mixed-use environment with residential and with hopefully, you know, a reasonable streetscape and other kinds of things that eventually, over time, will give us an environment in that part of town that, you know, will create the kind of development that we'd like to see there. So I like the idea of something like this, even though when I first read about it and thought about it, oh, gee, you know, Commerce Drive for something like this. But I think in the long run, this is where hopefully we're heading, and so I'm comfortable with it. I reviewed the materials provided by the organization that's behind this. They seem to, and I had the opportunity to question staff. It seems like a facility that will be run, you know, humanely and well, that the model has been used, I mean, not to use it, I mean, like, you know, properly, or I don't know what the right word, what is the right word for that? I guess gently, kind.
Not humanely.
Humanely.
It sounds like it's a shelter for dogs or something, yeah, I guess, right, yeah. No, but, you know, it's poor little children. No, no, the thing is that it seems like as though they have a terrific program there. The owner of the property is clearly working to see that this works. And as part of the discussion, you know, his interest, as he described, was not necessarily to see the highest dollar value out of the property, but rather to try to find something that he thought was an appropriate fit for the community. And I respect that and appreciate it very much, that there was that kind of thought behind it. It was interesting to note that he had family members, if you recall, the property owner had family members who had experienced the being part of the child development process with this organization. So anyway, I'm supportive, and I hope my colleagues will be as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Canali. Commissioner Jacobson?
I agree. I think this is a good application. I just have one minor condition I'd like to add. I'd like to add that the exterior of the building be subject to staff approval. That's the one thing we didn't get any specific idea about what was going to be on the outside. So
yeah, I'm absolutely welcome to that. I know that we had brief discussions, as you recall, about that. You know, they were trying to give us I mean, if you recall, also in those during the public hearing, there was a desire by the property owner to make it. They wanted to make it look attractive. But yeah, I don't disagree. It would be nice to condition this on this approval on just being able to see some final version.
Yeah,
is that possible, Mr. Devan?
If I could just
You're not asking for
request the
staff
condition
approval.
basically read, a revised exterior plan be submitted confirming the exterior improvements. I know it said clapboard in the application, but there was some discussion that the property owner was looking at other things. So just a condition that we get a revised...
and I don't think it has to come before us. I think
all right,
it
well,
should
we'll
just-
show you anyway.
Yeah.
Staff approval. The point is, I accept that, and I think that is reflective of the discussions we had about this.
Yeah, I think it should go before us, too.
I would think it would have to come before us. The issue is if you just want it submitted, they could submit something that no one likes or would approve. And
That's
the
fine.
mere requirement of submitting it shouldn't be enough to trigger automatic approval of
We'll
that.
make sure everyone has a chance to do it.
Right, perhaps it has to be submitted to this Commissioner Barrett's, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that was my concern, what Commissioner Jacobs said. I think it's actually was missing that, but I don't want to deny the application. because
No,
It's
I
really
don't either.
missing a full, I mean, they should submit an architectural plan showing the appearance, the
Yes.
building materials, and they didn't really have that.
Absolutely.
So I'd rather not vote against this because it was deficient, just condition it that they submit it and subject to the commission's approval.
We'll get that.
Yeah.
So if it's some sort of material that we don't like, if the architectural somehow, if there's something objectionable to it, we'd at least have a chance to review it.
So you're moving to amend, Commissioner Jacobson?
Yes, that's fine.
To add that condition?
That's fine.
And there was a second on that condition?
Second.
No, you can't.
I can't.
No. Someone,
I'll second.
Commissioner Jacobs will second
I
on
can't.
that.
Sounds
With
good.
that condition.
Well, there was amended, I guess.
She's moving to amend the approval of Commissioner Canali to add that condition, the condition being the approval, the architectural approval by
Comes
this commission.
before us. Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Which was seconded by Commissioner Jacobs.
Okay.
There's been a motion, this is moved and seconded with an amendment to the motion to add a condition, which has been moved and seconded. So now we're going to discuss the amendment only to this item. Is there any discussion on the amendment, that being specifically the architectural plan for the exterior, come to this commission for approval? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment only at this time, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. The amendment carries. So this item is now before this body with an amendment on it. Is there any discussion on the item as amended? The amendment being specifically to add the condition. Hearing Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the item, the approval of 682 Commerce Drive special exception application as amended to add a condition, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, item carries unanimously, 6-0 with the condition. We have one item on the compliance calendar. 1499 Post Road, application of Cleveland Holding Company to amend and approve sign plan in a center design district. Mr. Wen.
Okay, you have a plan and a photo mock-up of this proposal in your packet. This is I'll refer to as the Borders building, although Borders isn't a tenant anymore, the Fairfield University Bookstore building. How's that? The main entrance that gains access to the second floor is what's proposed here. The Higgins Group has leased some space on the second floor rather than having their own wall sign. They're looking to do an awning above the entrance, which is common. If you're familiar with the building, there's a common corridor that leads to access to the second floor in the center of the building. They're looking to put an awning there that identifies the address of the property as the main entrance, 1499 Post Road, but also identify Higgins Group on the awning. The color proposed is red to match the awning. The bookstore has a red awning on it now that does not have signage on it, but it is a consistent color proposed for the awning that is before you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wen. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Barrett has moved to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Kennelly is second. Is there any discussion on this item? Commissioner Jacobs.
Question for staff, does this still fall within the proper square footage for the building, for signage?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you. Commissioner Sutter.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, because according to the regulations, you have to calculate the entire square footage of the awning to decide whether it falls within the 72-foot square foot limit. And you have already done that?
Yes.
Okay. The second issue I saw with this application is section 29.8.7, projecting signs and unattached signs, which restricts signs from projecting more than 15 inches from a building wall. And according to the plans submitted, it looks like it's 4 feet from the building wall. And I know the commissioner the chairman is a strict constructionist, so I wonder if we have to impose this limitation restrictively.
The question is how one looks at the wall of the building, given the recess for the entrance, I suppose. You know,
The recess for what?
this is a recessed portion of the building.
Right.
So what wall are we measuring from? That wall or the main
I think
wall?
it's the wall to which it is attached, which is the recessed wall.
Correct.
Yeah, we've never, well, I should say we, the commission has never interpreted that projection. That's for letters on a, wall sign itself, not with respect to an awning sign, which we would expect would project further than.
So like Sweet Rexy's, for example, I think they have awning signs.
Yeah, we've got many
and that
examples
goes
of awning
beyond
signs
the brick face of the building.
Yeah. What we're talking about is a sign itself, like a channel letter that doesn't project out, or a
burst
blade.
out, yeah.
Where you turn a blade sign, you'll see in some place where the sign is actually vertical, reads vertically, and it sticks out from the face of the building. We've never interpreted that limitation to apply to awning signs.
Well, then I think that's the way we've done in the past. We should be consistent.
Mr. Barrett?
I'd point out, I would support this application. Also, as pointed out in the statement of use, a positive impact on safety. I find as I drive around, the more you have the building numbers on the buildings, the better it is, because people are looking for them.
Completely agree.
And the easier it is for them to see them, the less looking they're doing when they should be driving. And,
Completely true.
anybody driving into town saying, where's 1499, that may not be familiar where it is, I think this is a big benefit, so I would support this application.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this application? Hearing none, all in favor of compliance application of 1499 Post Road, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. At this point, we will stand in brief recess to configure the room for the public hearing. We have 3 public hearings, 544 Umpqua, number 2 zoning regulation amendment, number 3 455 Pine Creek Avenue. We will stand in a brief recess. Again, this is the December 11th, 2012 meeting of the Town of Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. We have 3 items on public hearing tonight. There were originally 4, and as I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, the application for a subdivision located at 145 Brookside Drive was withdrawn by the applicant. Therefore, it is not on our agenda, nor will it be rescheduled. It must be resubmitted to this commission. The first item of the remaining 3 items on public hearing is 544 Uncowa Road, request of Terry Donahue for a 100% release of a $25,556 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Donahue, and it's the subdivision that I started many years ago. Took a lot longer to get to this stage than I had planned originally, but we're finally here. All the work that was outlined in the approval process back in 2005 has now been completed, and I believe Mr. Wendt has a report from engineering so testifying, and I would request your approval to return the remaining bond money. I got half of it back in 2005.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue.
You're welcome.
Is there any comment by any member of the public? Mr. Wendt, did you have anything to... Do we have anything from Ms. Pooley?
Confirm what Mr. Donahue just stated, received today. You did not receive the packet.
Thank you.
With the anticipation, we did receive today with the engineering department reports that all work is complete. Recommend our consent.
Thank you. For the record, that was Mr. Wendt commenting. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment? Hearing none, Mr. Donahue, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I just have a question.
Commissioner Barrett has a
I
question.
didn't understand, Mr. Donahue. You're applying for a 100% release of a $25,000 bond, but you said you got half the money back?
Yeah, the original
already?
bond was $51,112.
So this is really a remaining 50% release?
Yes.
Okay, it's 100% of the remaining 50%?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donahue. And this will close the public hearing on this matter. Next item on public hearing are zoning regulation amendments, the application of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to amend sections 12.5, 28, and 29 of the zoning regulations of the Town of Fairfield. Mr. Wendt presenting.
Good evening. My name is Jim Wendt. I am your Assistant Planning Director. I feel like I've stepped into a time machine today coming back here. I would like to thank the Commission for their patience. As you may have noted from the materials, these 3 sections of the regulations were recommended to hearing by you back on the 4th of September. So it's taken us a little while to get to this stage, but nevertheless, here we are. We are making, proposing changes to 3 sections of the regulations with respect to neighborhood design business districts, off-street parking and loading, and signs. And I am not intending to read the entirety of the text that we're proposing. I've prepared an outline with respect to each of those sections. Firstly, with respect to section 12.5, which is the neighborhood design business district regulations, there are 2 proposed changes. One is to limit the size of an individual business or professional office tenant to a maximum of 4,000 square feet. As this commission knows, there are a number of uses that are presently capped at 4,000 square feet. Retail uses and the majority of uses within the district are presently capped at 4,000 square foot per tenant, not per building, per tenant. And this proposal seeks to extend that limitation to business and professional offices. Secondly, we are proposing to cap the total gross floor area of any individual building to 14,000 square feet.
That's section 12.7.5.2.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So, right now, there is still a gross floor area limitation as a percentage of your lot area, and you can still, depending on your lot area, theoretically build a larger, more than 14,000 square feet. You'd have to do so in multiple buildings. But what this proposal would do is cap the individual total square footage of any one particular building at 14,000 square feet.
And that is only with regard to the neighborhood business.
In the neighborhood design business district only, yes. The next section we're looking at is off-street parking and loading, which is the section...
One second,
Oh, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Sitter has a question.
I just want to note a typo. There's in section 12.5.1, we have approved parking areas that use it. It's not included in the existing text. That should be correct.
Yes, that is a good point. That was done subsequent to the initial draft, but we will include that in there. Thank you.
Also, I'd note for the record that apparently there was a printer glitch where random spaces appear between words like professional, which we'll have to correct that in the final.
Yeah,
I know that something
it
happened.
looks, the document on screen is flawless, but sometimes when it prints, it adds random spaces for some
Exactly. We've
reason.
seen this online. It has random spacing
Yeah.
between certain words. Coverage has a space in the middle of it.
We'll take a look at that. With respect to Section 28, off-street parking and loading, this is the section we're proposing the most amendments. Firstly, we're proposing a goals statement to help support what we are proposing to do, and I will just read that briefly. It's in section 28.2. It is the purpose of these regulations to foster parking designs that accomplish the following goals: to improve the quality of the streetscape, to increase the tree canopy, to increase permeability, to mitigate storm runoff, and to improve pedestrian and vehicular circulation. So with those overarching goals in mind, the proposals are as follows. In section 28.4, we are proposing a double line striping configuration. There is a new diagram that we are attaching. So rather than a single line striping, each side has to be a double line. And in particular, with respect to parking structures, we're requiring that all spaces are free of obstruction. So in the design of a parking structure, they have to be mindful of the supporting columns, which sometimes don't work out in the final striping. In section 28.6.1, the proposal is to, there's been a lot of discussion about this in previous applications, but to not count a driveway apron space that would be in front of a structured garage space in a condominium type development is counting towards a requisite space. So if you have a two-car garage with 2 parking spaces and then a driveway that's enough, wide enough to park 2 additional cars, you'd get credit for 2 parking spaces under this proposal rather than 4. So we're making it clear that spaces in front of a garage do not count, and we're also requiring a requisite number of visitor spaces be provided in condominium developments. In section 28.6.12, we're considering allowing the first 150 square feet of seasonal outdoor dining be allowed without requiring additional parking. Section 28.10.
What section again? 28?
6.12, one space for 40 feet of fixed floor area with a portion thereof, period, piecing thereof, then bolded.
I think that's a typo. That should be printed as a comma.
Where is the typo?
Or capitalized.
Comma or semicolon or something.
Yeah, it should be comma.
It should be a comma.
Sentence with except. Put blank.
See what that is, Mr. Wendt? That's a comma.
Yeah, we just would remove the
We'll make sure-
period that's in the existing
I'll
text.
make sure it's a comma.
In section 28.10, we have proposed language that would require parking lot drainage designs to comply with the Department of Environmental Protection Stormwater Quality Manual and encourage low-impact development techniques. And to do that, one of the incentives we're proposing is to allow some credit for parking spaces that could have otherwise been permitted or provided in the absence of doing these low-impact development techniques such as drainage swales and the like. Section 28.11.3, in the shade tree requirement, the present regulations require them to be in curbed islands, and along with the low-impact development techniques, it's not always best to have a curbed island. Sometimes you want a depressed island that allows the water to drain into it, so we're eliminating the requirement that the shade trees be within curbed islands.
This is a typo in that paragraph as well.
Line 2, after the word parking, the word spaces should be in there.
That would be an amendment to existing regulations.
That's not in the existing regs. I don't believe we need to check
I
that.
think the existing regs, all we're doing is striking this, that must be there already.
It is, I just think it's a nice way to...
No, in the original regulations, it says 28.11.3, the word spaces does come after parking. There's a typo. Somehow that word was deleted. Which is strange.
I'm not following you here. Where are we looking?
28.11.3, first sentence, last word is parking, period.
Actual text, it should be accurate.
And then it goes to this requirement may apply.
Oh, I got it.
Commissioner
So
Suter
the
indicated-
word spaces has been omitted there.
But if I go into it, but it actually is the word spaces is in our current regulation, 28.11.3.
Right.
It just didn't appear on the printing for some reason.
Yeah, just in general, Mr. Chairman, I think, I mean, the way I think we're doing these motions, which we've done in the past, and stuff is bolded text is added, bracketed text is be deleted. That's what we'll be looking at and voting on. If we're gonna like take this entire section 28 and drop it in, then somebody's gotta do a real check to make sure we're not adding or deleting any words that are already there.
Yeah.
So as much as I like all this concentration on commas and periods and stuff, I think what we're really voting on is adding or the bold text, deleting the bracketed text, but also making sure that it does flow with the existing regulations, so.
Just to be clear, it's the bracketed underlined text. We have brackets in other sections, perhaps in the regs. Nothing changed. It has to be bracketed and underlined to be deleted.
So that's what we're really considering, but it's still good to make sure that the existing stuff is right.
Correct.
Next, excuse me, in section 28.11.4, we are proposing a new section that all exterior lighting be dark sky, International Dark Sky Association compliant with fully cut off fixtures. And section 28.11.5 requiring pedestrian walks and pavement markings within parking lots. Lastly, with respect to section 29.0 signs, two changes being proposed here. 29.8.5, we're proposing adding language that would prohibit visibility of the light source. This is really to address the prevalence of LED technology. And similarly, in 29.8.14, we're proposing that illuminated window signs be prohibited within a building. If it's primarily intended to be visible from the exterior and it's illuminated, it is not permitted to be in the window. Again, to address the growing prevalence of LED technology. That is a outline summation of the sections that we are proposing to amend. If anybody, the public or this commission, has further questions, we can get into it in a little more elaborate fashion, should you wish to. But for now, that is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item? Sir.
Good evening. For the record, my name is James Thompson. I live at 2824 Bronson Road in Fairfield, and by profession, I'm an architect. I have a number of comments to make. I'll try to be succinct. First of all, I think it's very important for the Commission to understand that the lack of a public presence here tonight is an indication of a lack of transparency and adequate publication of these proposed regulation changes. I myself only became aware of them within the last week, and in an effort of searching the town website and other sources, was unable to find information beyond this outline that was presented in the public notice. So the actual full language of the text I've not been able to avail myself of for an adequate review and comment, and I think it'd be inappropriate for these regulations to be voted on and put in force without a much better understanding by the public of what this entails. And I'm like the only person in the whole town of Fairfield who might have some thoughts on this, an indication to you guys that you've really not somehow connected with the community on the impact of these proposals. Having said that, I'd like to know where to get a copy of the full text of the documents that are proposed. That's the first question.
I should just note for the record, sir, that we've had at least a half dozen, if not a dozen, planning meetings attended by the public specifically on these regulations over the last year to year and a half.
This may be my
we've got a
particular
long public
personal problem, but I just wanted to share that, having only become aware of these, I do have a couple of comments made on these proposals, and I will avail myself of the full text as soon as possible, and hope that this is not a final. I know many other people in the community who are not aware of this, and so that's the basis of my comment. Thank you. You know, my questions relate.
Each of those planning meetings was also noticed and open to the public, and also. Use the microphone, please. Sorry. And also was recorded in the minutes.
Okay. Again, maybe a completely personal problem, but you know.
I'm not being critical of your comment that you just learned about it. I can appreciate that, but I think that what we may be reacting to is your comment that we were not being transparent about the process. And,
duly noted.
I don't think that that is accurate.
Okay, I accept that fully. And
these are the product of a fairly lengthy process, public process.
Well, I apologize if I'm coming late to the process, but late I am, and here I am.
Very good.
So, again, I would like, you know, a little explanation and understanding on the. I understand the effort in 12.5.2 to make the professional and business uses consistent with all the other uses in the neighborhood design business district. But I do wonder if there has been an analysis of the degree of nonconformance of existing business and professional office uses that would be created by implementing the 4,000 square foot rule and potential hardship on existing building owners. Again, maybe an issue that you've addressed previously, but if I could hear an answer tonight that might allay my concerns about that, I would be interested in that. On the gross floor area, you know, I can, as a design professional, I can see some interesting challenges that are presented by a property that allows larger than 14,000 square feet of gross construction within the design business district being carved into pieces smaller than 14,000, and how that would ultimately relate to your retail and professional use on a first floor and a 50% rule on the second, 50% of total area for residential use above. My concern with that would be, you know, how that ultimately coordinates with you know, section 12752 and 12761, in that we have setback requirements in the zoning regulations for front, rear, and side yards, but there really isn't anything, to my understanding and knowledge, in the ordinances and regulations that deals with multiple structures on an undivided parcel in terms of separations, fire access. I can see a number of different problems that would be created by having a lack of clarity about coordination to the building code back. And again, maybe a belated comment, but if it's been addressed, I will look back into the record and understand that better, that it's been addressed appropriately. The last comment I have, I think, obviously, many of these parking things are really great ideas. I think great improvements in the current regulations. I have to tease you a little bit that there is no longer a DEP in the state of Connecticut. There's a DEEP. Item 28.10. The dark sky regulations, great idea. But a little dangerous to incorporate by reference in that, the Dark Sky Society and, the IDA guidelines and things are not a code. They change very frequently. There's probably 50 pages in their current guides and guidelines, which are really, so I just wonder how and what, portions of that you're going to be able to pin a general reference to, and maybe that's explained more adequately in the full text, but I would be concerned about simply incorporating those. I think it's a great concept, but the specificity of its incorporation would be very important. I'd also be very curious to know and understand that those dark sky regulations would apply to all public and municipal facilities as well as private, because the primary problem with light pollution and night sky problems are created by the public sector, not the private sector. And will these regulations apply equally to all municipal facilities, schools, street lighting, and utilities? Because that's where the problem lies primarily, not with private structures. So, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment? Sir.
My name is Paul Richter. I reside at 635 Springer Road, Fairfield, and I represent the ownership of 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, a portion of which has a neighborhood design business district in it. My question is, where did the 4,000 square foot number for a single tenancy come from? Has there been expert testimony provided that establishes that as the optimal figure?
When you say expert testimony, what do you mean? A business person telling us that that's, or a realtor telling us that that's the optimal? Is that your idea of an expert, in other words?
Well, where did the number come from?
Okay. Well, where it came from was in a series of meetings that the commission had to discuss what we thought was appropriate, looking on over time and experience over the years of dealing with neighborhood design business districts and the applications that came before us, and an effort to try as best we could to make sure that the neighborhood design business districts, while they remained attractive to businessmen or business people to do business in those areas, also at the same time did not become invitations for things developing in those districts that the surrounding residential community did not want or expect in that area.
So why not 2,000 or 8,000?
Well,
We're not going to debate.
no, but...
We'll answer a question, not
Answer
debate.
the question.
Right, but when the regulations were established, the 4,000 square foot limit appears in virtually every other category. And the professional and office space category, for some reason, was not so limited. And this is, in some ways, an effort to bring that section in line with the remainder of the limitations for other uses.
Very good. And I have the same question for the 14,000 square foot limit. Yes.
Commissioner Barron?
I can try to answer that one. And I agree, the 4,000, that's what it was. The existing 4,000 applied to all these sections except that one. It's applied for 5 years, and we couldn't remember why we didn't apply it to business and professional office. So that number has been actually been existent, applying to everything almost but that, including banks, financial institutions, retail.
And there's been argument that the 4,000 by inference applies also to professional and office space, and we have treated it that way.
Right.
This merely spells it out.
It does, and so.
Right.
You want to address the 14,000?
Yeah, when the 14,000, we actually took an inventory, I think this was part of Mr. Thompson's question too, of every structure, because we debated this for hours in the district, because there is one structure, I don't know if it's the one you represent, I think it's Scap Dodge, and that's actually like 30,000 square feet, and there's a couple others. But in all the uses in all the 12 districts, I think there were only 3 current ones greater than 14,000 square feet, and tons that were less. And that's where it came up. Should it be 16? Should it be 12? Should it be 11? We really wanted to minimize any nonconformances created, and I think the number was 3. The staff could correct me on that, perhaps, but...
3, I believe 3 is correct. One approved, yet to be built.
That was the matter.
One approved for it to be built, right? There was an approved one on Reef Road or something.
That's correct,
Yeah. So that's where that came from. We actually looked at every use in every district in the entire town, and we came up with 14,000. It couldn't be the maximum, because that would be, I think, Scap Dodge's technically. I think, I may be wrong. I think that's actually in the neighborhood design district, and that's like a huge number, so that really wouldn't be the appropriate number.
So do I understand correctly that the building approved on Reef Road is, if this regulation change passes, will be non-conforming?
That's correct.
It'll be immediately non-conforming?
But it can still be built, because it was approved under different regulations. That's correct.
My final question was there any consideration when establishing the 4,000 or the 14,000 figures to the effect on the grand list?
The tax impact?
Correct.
By state law, we can't even look at that. It's not in our jurisdiction to look at tax impacts.
Well, it significantly devalues property value, and property valuation, and how...
You can make the argument that any regulations that we make restrict property valuation. I'd love to have my quarter acre be able to put I'd like to put an office building with 10 stories high on it, and you know what, I wish we would get rid of these regulations so I could get back the value of my home in the last 10 years.
I'd like to see that presentation.
Allowing this gentleman to build his 10th building.
Please.
Bring down the value of everyone else on that street.
But therein lies the rub.
Hold on, I mean, I think that the inverse can also be said, okay? This is in a neighborhood designed district, and, you know, the residential uses in those districts want to maintain a mixed use that will support their property values as well. So, you know, this is a balance, and it's one which we certainly approached in a very meaningful way. You know, I frankly don't know the basis of your statement that these proposals will reduce the property values of properties that are within this area.
I have almost 30 years in the commercial real estate business in Fairfield, so, and I know that when you limit what can be done on a piece of property, limiting the tenant size, limiting the size of development on a piece of property, that it will impact the value.
Of that particular property,
Correct.
absolutely.
That's right.
But what this commission, what prompted this, was that this commission was faced with a number of, or not a number, but applications that came before us, most notably the Plant Factory, where applications to create neighborhood design business districts with structures that were going to be far larger than 14,000 square feet, because there wasn't a cap, were proposed to us. And at the end of the day, while I'm all for, you know, doing all we can to control that tax burden, it isn't part of our what makes up our deliberations in terms of the formal process. There has to be some sort of balance. And I would also say that these neighborhood design business districts are relatively small pieces of the overall grand list. Overwhelmingly, I mean, they are, you know, compared to the commercial districts, compared to the residential properties here in town, it's a fairly significantly small percentage against what would be the potential negative impacts for residents who live here, not only for their quality of life, but the potential impacts on their properties. So.
Well, let me ask the question another way. Has there been any research or consideration to the effect of these regulations on the building you approved on Reef Road? The devaluation of that building by limiting him to 4,000 square foot tenants?
Has there been a specific analysis for one building, you're asking?
Well, any building. I'm using that as an example since you've recently approved it.
There was no analysis.
We didn't consider any.
No, there was no one parcel considered.
We considered the entire town.
Yeah.
All parcels.
Well, that's an example. That's what I said.
And in the same token, when we did our overlay district down by the new railroad station, we took property that was commercial and not worth a lot of money, and now made it into worth a real lot of money. So we have affected the grand list there, not looking at the grand list, because we can't look at the grand list, but it can be balanced out throughout the town, because you owned a property there before, the railroad station before it was built, you had a little industrial property, what are you going to do with it, blah, blah, blah. Now you put an apartment house with mixed use in there. Now, did that affect the property value? Did that affect the grand list?
Of course.
We're looking at the whole town. We're looking at a plan for the whole town.
Well, I would ask that this hearing be postponed or kept open until there is an analysis done on the effect of these regulations on the grand list, whether you're allowed to consider that or not.
Well, I would think that then we would have to
Is-
keep
isn't
open,
it-
but I don't think we would have to, not that we would, but we have to do that for every single decision we made, what the impacts are. Every day, or every meeting here, we decide whether a school will have an addition and whether a homeowner will have a school closer to them. We decide every meeting whether or not one apartment condominium complex will be constructed next to a commercial strip or not. There aren't economic analysis done for those decisions. So, I mean,
It's not within our jurisdiction. It's public comment now.
you're right. I mean, this is.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to comment, sir?
I'm Bruce McDonald. I live at 74 Hamilton Court in Fairfield, and I just want to speak to 12.5.2. I am involved in healthcare, and if professional offices include medical office buildings, and I know they do, the delivery of healthcare in the next 5 to 10 years is going to change very, very dramatically. So where throughout the town of Fairfield you have physician offices of 2 and maybe 3 or maybe 1 doctor, they're going to be consolidated into larger groups than a 4,000 square foot to 1 tenant probably will not be sufficient. So you will, at least in this neighborhood design business district, you will not be able to have medical office buildings for physicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Fallon?
I wasn't going to speak, and I'm speaking solely for the record, John Fallon, for myself. How's that? I don't think I've ever done that before. Holy crow. I just want to echo Dr. McDonald's comments. You might want to consider that. I respect your decision after deliberation in terms of the aspect of the gross square footage of the building. But I hope you might give some consideration for the primary reason that Bruce just said, to this limit of 4,000 square foot. I think there is a difference between your formula store amendment and retail uses and professional office uses, and I think Dr. McDonald just touched on it. One of the better uses in the spirit of the neighborhood design district is professional offices and, let me say, medical offices, because when you really look at what we're trying to accomplish in terms of neighborhood design districts, at least partially, certainly medical office is a good mix there. And it's certainly convenient. You've heard me before in some applications you've approved and some you've denied, talk about the benefit of having medical practitioners in our community where they're readily available to our citizens. And I think that's a good thing, and I think the neighborhood design district is a particularly good district for that. But Dr. McDonald is absolutely right. You're not going to be able to attract, especially in this age of changing medicine and medical practices, those kind of medical tenants in those buildings. I don't speak for the owner of the Reef Road building, although I represented him when you approved the application. I speak only for myself. But I think that building is a very viable building as it was proposed to you and as you approved it, and that is for medical office use. But if you limit that building, and I forget, Jim, what was it, 20,000, 15, 18,000? What is Reef Road? It's not a huge building. Yeah, but if you make him break it up, it's going to be very hard to do, because the most likely users, as Dr. McDonald would say, would be an institutional user like a hospital who wants to have its affiliated doctors have a place to go, but they'd be the master tenant. So please give that some thought. I think you can accomplish what you want to accomplish, but I think there is a rational distinction in terms of the spirit of the neighborhood district between limiting the size of retail tenants and your whole concept of the formula store amendment for retail use, as opposed to a blanket restriction on professional offices to 4,000 square feet.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon. Is there any other member of the public?
Good evening, I'm Larry Foley. I own the buildings on Bronson Road. And I just want to give you a little bit of insights to me as a passive investor and developer and how I view this law. I own two buildings that are roughly, 4,400 square feet each? 10,000 each. And they're both sole, clients. And I took two buildings and put one tenant in one, and I reside in one with my business. And I don't really create a whole lot of traffic on a daily basis. So if I was forced to break the buildings up and have doctors in it, I'd have people coming in all the time and creating a lot more traffic pattern, which I think would be detrimental to a mixed-use residential area. So I had a conversation too where I appreciate the conversation today on building on Hillside. I'm just trying to take buildings that have been there for years, reinvest in them, and I'm actually not making a lot of money on them. I'm just taking a 30-year view on it, and I'm able to put my business in it. And I had a conversation today with the Greenfield Hill Association where if I wasn't able to put my business here with this day and age, I probably wouldn't want to live this far out of the city. And I think having my type of capital come into the community is beneficial. I create jobs, keep developing. Recently, I bought 22 acres of farmland, and I'm keeping it vacant, which is not putting a burden, I think, on the tax basis or the school system. So I think, to really analyze all this, it's a different time. I would imagine when my buildings were built, in the 1972, that had to be a very controversial development back then. I mean, so what attracted me to that property was the uniqueness in the area. And if you discourage people like myself to buy these buildings, reinvent them, and create jobs, I think the town overall will suffer. We know the boundaries to getting into the city now, and I love living up here. I'm a New Yorker, but now I'm a Connecticut guy. I've been up here 14 years, and I want to continue to passively invest in the town, but I want the town to actually have my back and do everything tastefully. So I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you. I think it's always good to put a face behind the vision. I think I've been very vocal and very transparent of what I've tried to do and what I plan to do if I have the opportunity down in that little area, and is to make it more contemporary in the sense that bring up to speed and have everybody in the community use it. The buildings that surround me have not had any investment in 20 years. And if everybody goes by and sees my buildings, I plot a lot of cash into them. And I'm doing it for, first of all, myself, but also in good taste. So I appreciate you listening to me. I would always be like to have as a resource, I'm actually impartial to it all. If I don't do it, hopefully somebody else does it and makes the right economic decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments by any member of the public?
Can I just do one thing on the record? Is it possible? Let me explain. We really need to take this up when we get to executive session on this, but I just want to make sure that anyone who may have casually tuned in, say, on Fair TV, who may not have heard everything, that they're clear that these regulations deal with neighborhood design business districts, that there's no effort to limit these spaces all over town that way. So just that nothing is mistaken by anyone who's not watching carefully, or we don't have any press here tonight, but I just hope that's clear so that any misinformation doesn't get out to the public. There's, a number of sites, and there's quite a glut, I understand, of, for example, of medical office space here in Fairfield. So if there's a desire, for example, to have medical offices here in town that people can visit without getting anywhere, leaving town, they can do so. And just
Mr. Sitter?
Yeah, I think also in considering the neighborhood design districts, we're aware of some of the history of that particular kind of district in that when the regulations were drawn up, they were drawn up on the basis of what already existed in different parts of town. In the past few years, we've had testimony from people, particularly in considering the commerce area planning, that a typical walking district, this distance for people who walk to places, tends to be top out at about half a mile. So you could say a neighborhood is, a commercial center serves a radius of half a mile. I mean, that would be a good argument. I think that would be supported by fact. So neighborhood uses tend to be small. And one of the reasons they're small is you want to limit parking problems and traffic problems. And you want to eliminate the excessive traffic that might come if somebody put in what might be called a mini big box or some larger commercial facility. I think we're trying to maintain both the practicality and the feasibility and the charm of our small neighborhood commercial centers, and that's why we're sensitive to these square footage requirements. And we've thought a lot about them, which isn't to say we couldn't think about them some more, but we have thought a lot about them.
And we will have another executive session, you're correct, to discuss this. Mr. Wendt, do you have some final comments?
I was remiss in omitting a couple of housekeeping details with respect to some referrals that were received. But firstly, I want to thank the folks that spoke this evening. And along the same lines, we did receive a letter this afternoon from the Economic Development Commission that I handed to the commissioners. But along some of the comments that we heard, the Economic Development Commission themselves are concerned about the 14,000 square foot total square footage and 4,000 tenant maximums, and are requesting that on that basis, those two items, that the hearing also be kept open so they would have an opportunity to review this further. So that comes from the Economic Development Commission. From a I am required to read into the record the referrals that we received from both the Southwestern Regional Planning Agency and the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council. The Southwest Regional Planning Agency comment was the scale of the proposed changes is not likely to have intermunicipal impacts. And from Greater Bridgeport, they met on November 28th to discuss these proposals, and it was a consensus of that group that if adopted, the proposed regulations would have a positive regional impact because it sets some good, new and good standards that similar communities should follow. So those were the referrals that we got, and I just wanted to read, I neglected to read into the record the letter from the chairman of the Economic Development Commission. Thank you.
Your final, Mr. Commissioner Barrett.
Yes, yeah, not to deliberate on the matter, but just to kind of recap some of the things that I've heard tonight. We have zoning regulation amendments in 3 areas, and we discussed these at kind of the same planning meetings. We had different discussions about them. There are different topics, and tonight we're considering the same public hearing. For other than some comments by Mr. Thompson, which we certainly could consider, the changes proposed in Section 28 to parking and loading and signs were well thought out, deliberated for a long time, but they're technical requirements that I think most applicants will comply with. On the other hand, Section 12.5 has raised some questions tonight, and we have a letter from Economic Development requesting that we hold off. But the question here is, do we want to close the public hearing or do you want to leave it open? Even if this was a regular public hearing, there's no statutory time constraint on this. We're the applicant here. It's not like the public is an applicant. Normally we have a certain amount of time to close the public hearing. I'm wondering if you want to leave it open just to make it more available. Just throwing that out there because the economic development, what's his title? Mr. Penzer requested, and we heard some good comments from some comments from the public, and I don't know if you want to keep it open.
Well, here's my concern, if I could respond, Mr. Vice Chairman. First off, let me say that your commitment to openness, is one, the very reason just about anything compliance has shown up here is under your chairmanship, that we really were sticklers about ensuring we engage the public. But I would say this has been a year-long process. There have been a number of meetings. But I'm very concerned about us setting a precedent where we propose a regulatory change, or we go to a public hearing on any matter that we are going to decide, and then at the 11th hour, we receive a communication from whatever public body, but especially one that deals with economic impacts, that maybe the public hearing needs to be extended. I don't see why, once we've made that precedent, once we've set that precedent here, why we wouldn't begin to, almost as a matter of course, then have to ensure that the Economic Development Commission has passed judgment on whatever changes we may have wanted to move ahead with it and all. This process has been an open one. This process has been a deliberative one. This process has taken over a year. So my sense is I think it's a very, it's the wrong precedent to set, to say that we're going to leave now a public hearing open because we're being asked by the Economic Development Corporation, the Economic Development Commission, to do that, to leave it open. Of course, there's going to be some squawking about this kind of stuff, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, I think that the judgment, the big broad judgment on the 14 questions, was what we have lived through as commissioners, and that is, did we believe over time, through time and experience, that we needed to make sure that these changes were put in place to ensure that the spirit of the neighborhood design business regulations, neighborhood design business district regulations, were maintained. And we can get into this in executive session, but again, there is a glut of office space, for example, for medical. And if the medical profession is changing so that there's going to be these large entities that are going to employ scores of doctors and all that kind of stuff, okay. And maybe the neighborhood dentist or doctor is something that passes away. But that doesn't mean there aren't other applications and uses for these spaces in these neighborhoods. But saying we should leave the neighborhoods open to larger and larger enterprises so we can have 20 doctors or 15 doctors or 18 doctors in the neighborhood, rather than 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 in a particular neighborhood design commercially, I don't see that as a rationale for turning over what we're doing here. I don't. The profession has changed, fair enough. The economics of the profession has changed. And there are going to be districts in this town that are going to be able to handle that space. There is space out there, so.
Thank you. I don't believe that now is the time for us to be debating the merits of this. And I think that some of the comments have bleeded a little bit too far into that. I don't believe that holding the public hearing open will set a precedent. We've done that many times before. This is not based solely upon the Office of Economic Development's request, although that's one of the things that I would consider in making the decision to hold it open. Members of the public that came out to comment today also asked for time to further consider the regulations and to conduct an analysis. If we were to mark this down for another public hearing, they could present those findings or whatever information that they want to. I don't believe that this should be considered to be the 11th hour or the 12th hour. That's the purpose of a public hearing, is to have people come out and voice their views and let us know what the public wants to communicate on the record. And that is different from attending our planning sessions. I did take exception to 2 comments suggesting that we were not transparent in this process. I think it is absolutely to the contrary. We've been more than transparent. But at the same time, whether we like it or not, this is the process. And the members of the public should be afforded the opportunity that they're requesting. And I don't think it's unreasonable. And any further request to hold a public hearing open rises and falls on its own facts. And so there's no precedent being set. I do tend to agree that a town office should have been more in front of the curve than, for example, some of the members of the public who testified today that they actually tried to get a copy of the regulations online at the website and they weren't able to find them. So, you know, I would be in favor of holding this open.
Yeah, I think I misspoke before. I was just trying to, yeah, I don't think we should hold it open because somebody in the town office that had attended some of our planning meetings thinks now. But
Right.
I am, you know, considering like, you know, the public and these things, you know, we publicize them legally. We can't control what the newspapers write or what they choose to, you know, make note of. So perhaps we would have gotten a bigger turnout through publicity that we don't generate.
Well, we also can't
ourselves.
publicize it. I mean, it is not within our...
We're not in the advertising. I understand that. So I'm suggesting, yeah, I'd be possibly, you know, it's really the chairman's decision. What I'm saying to leave something open or anything. It's not something we generally vote on. But generally, I would, you know, I wouldn't see the harm in leaving it open. I'm kind of disturbed, though. You know, these off-street parking and loading and signs, we've been waiting for some of these things for a long time, and you know, and I'd like to get these on the books as soon as possible, so
I agree.
I'm concerned about leaving some of them open, because some of them address concerns that we have immediately where we're getting applications, and I'd rather see our applications comply with these than not.
Well,
Not debating the merits,
we can
just
split
kind
them
of...
up.
Well, hold on. Well, two things about that is I'd like to see these done as a package, because I'm very concerned that one of the kind of things that happens in Fairfield a lot is that the easy stuff gets swallowed and the tough medicine doesn't end up happening. And clearly the tough medicine is this. I would just say this to my colleagues. Let's imagine we had a public hearing about a subdivision. And on the night of the public hearing, someone showed up and said, I'd really just like this to stay open. Why would you like it to stay open? Because I think I can bring down 50 of my friends next time, and we're going to debate this. That's essentially what we're being told.
No, that is not the case.
That is absolutely the case.
And there have been subdivision hearings that I have advocated to keep open when members of the public have come down and said, I just learned about this last week and I need more time.
And how often have we not done that?
Yes, and we have held public hearings open, and we have given the
Very
residents more
rarely.
time. Yeah,
Very
and I'm telling you that it's my view.
Rarely?
Yes, and I'm telling you that it's my view that this is one of those appropriate circumstances.
Well, it's my view it isn't.
Fine.
My inclination as I sit here is to close the public hearing as to 28 and 29 and leave it open as to 12:05 for, subject to what you folks, I'd like to listen to my co-commissioners, closing it as to 28 and 29, leave it open for 12:05, put it on our next agenda and resolve, have the final hearing on 12:05 at that time, if anyone should choose to come and discuss it at that time. I'd like to throw that out there here.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
If, in fact, representatives of the medical and business communities arrive and present, but then a member learning late about this from one of the neighborhood organizations that have been supportive of neighborhood design business districts in their area, Greenfield Hill or Stratfield or something, if they show up at the next one and they say, hey, we didn't get a chance to respond, will we also then, based on this precedent for openness, will we also then keep the public hearing open for them?
You know, I can
Was that okay?
respond to that. Would you?
Well, I'm asking the chairman.
That's a slippery slope, that's why.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you now. That's why I'm asking, Mr. Chairman. That's exactly right, Mr. Chairman. We went through a year-long public process. We're having a public hearing tonight. Now we're going to keep this public hearing open so the forces can be marshaled against perhaps this one element that is now going to be peeled off, it appears. What will happen when that public hearing closes? Will, as I said, if we get to the end of that public hearing and suddenly someone from a neighborhood design business district neighborhood association, Stratfield Village Association, Greenfield Hill Village Association, etc. If they then show up and say, please extend it, we want to bring down 300 folks from the residential neighborhoods, we'd like another meeting, will we do that as well? Will we? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, the short answer, I think, is no. As I've said, these requests rise and fall on their own facts. It is abundantly clear to me that if we reconvened in 2 weeks or a month for a subsequent public hearing and another member of another group came forward and said, hey, sorry, I just learned about this, I've been out of the loop, my response would be, I'm sorry, but we have publicized this. Now we've conducted one public hearing, and as a result of a request to keep it open, we did, and that's it, if we were to conclude, okay? And I disagree with your sentiment that somehow now things are going to get peeled off, or there are going to be forces marshaled against, you know. You're your own man. You can listen and you can receive comments from the public and make your informed decision however you would like to. But my saying that I would like the public to have the opportunity that they've asked for to present their comments and make the record doesn't mean that my position is going to be changed. But they have a right to come forward. They've asked, and I'm inclined to give them the opportunity.
Well, I would just say this. When you say the public, what I've seen is, tonight we've had a handful of individuals connected to the development and business community come here and say that they would like to do so. Look, all I can say to you is this. The commissioners will make their own decision about how they feel about these regulations. But again, this isn't about openness in government. What I'm concerned about here is fairness, fundamental fairness. Would we have a situation where, the answer is no. 9 times out of 10, when we have had a public hearing, and we've done as exhaustive amount of work on this kind of stuff as we have through this process, would we, after a public hearing has been presented and individuals have expressed their concerns, what else is there to be marshaled? We understand the arguments. The argument is that there's a negative economic impact on those who have properties in these areas. If you reduce this, if you write out, if you specifically state that their medical professional offices must be limited to 4,000, and that the total square footage of a building will be 14,000. We've heard those views expressed. We will hear more of the same views expressed. This would be as though 3 homeowners came down and said, we have 100 other people who can come down here and express to you why you shouldn't vote for this. And we'd like a public hearing to keep going to bring the 100 more in. How often do we do that? Have we made rare exceptions? Sure. But those rare exceptions are just that, exceptions. And they certainly didn't come after a lengthy process of several planning meetings.
Another way of looking at this, it seems to me, is the kind of notice that's given to the public. I know that newspaper notice is given to the public, and that fulfills our legal requirement. And we've had complaints from people during our hearings who feel they haven't had sufficient notice, even when it's published in a newspaper. It seems to me that there may be a defect in the process this particular time in that the actual text of the regulations apparently were not available to the public. And our regulations are important, and the text is important. And I think it's difficult for the public to develop an informed opinion and to make an informed comment at a hearing, or even to show up at a hearing if they can't read the regulations. So on that basis, that the public, it would be unfair to the public to simply go ahead and decide tonight, I think is a good one. And I think that would be a sound basis for continuing.
Well, is that in fact the case, Mr. Devanchik? Was this not properly noticed? Because if it wasn't, then I'm in complete agreement with my colleagues. If the basis for this is a lack of proper notice, if you will acknowledge that was the case, then I will gladly extend the public hearing. Is that the case?
It wouldn't be here if it was properly noticed. With that said,
It was noticed, yeah.
you notice the changes in the way. The argument, I guess, which doesn't happen here, is that the entire text of our regulations, which are available in our office, weren't also attached to those changes.
So the changes were published, just not all the regulations of the town of Fairfield.
I mean, the entire text of the reg.
The changes were published.
No, the actual changes were not published. The summary was in the notice, and the document was available at town offices if someone knew and wanted to and went down to get a copy of the regulations. Okay?
I guess the answer is the legal notice, to be clear, does not include the entire text of our regulations,
Correct.
the red line version.
Correct, and it's not required to. Okay?
The text of the changes was included in the notice?
No.
So what was published is exactly what's been provided in our packet, typically the notice of public hearing December 11, 2012.
Right.
What was published, for instance, Neighborhood Design District, the entire text of our regs was not published, but what was published was 12.5.2, limit business and professional office tenant to a maximum of 4,000 square feet. 12.7.5.2, limit the total gross floor area of any building to 14,000 square feet.
That's right.
28.2, include goal statement regarding streetscape, tree canopy, storm runoff, etc. Down to 2 pages listing the specific sections, listing the specific sections. What was published was what's been provided to us. It's not the complete copy of our regulations, but a summary of the changes by section with what the changes are
Just
being
a
proposed.
comment on the reality is once you approve this intent, of course, then the complete finished text of all commas and question marks and whatever else is going to be included would then be published. But the bottom line is the intent of what was being proposed was being
Is this what we have done in past? In other words, well, I've been on this commission for 6 years. What we have done prior to this meeting to vote on other, to hold public hearings, this is the same. There's no difference. Essentially? But the point is that this is what you gave, this is what you have provided to the public. So there's no specific defect here as described, so, okay.
Not only that, when we have a subdivision, it says the subdivision is noticed. It doesn't give any of the papers, any of the maps, any of the, any of the details of it. If you want it, you need to go to town hall to get it. If someone wanted to get the full text, couldn't they have gone to town hall and picked it up? It would be the same as, oh, there's a subdivision. And they say, well, I want it open because I couldn't go to town hall. So keep it open now. I couldn't make it to town hall to pick it up. Well, it's the same thing. If someone saw this in the newspaper, saw it and wanted the full text, you go to town hall. You pick it up. Now, I think all of this should be on the website. Every time there is a subdivision, everything should be on the website as a PDF. And we've been saying that for a number of years. But that's not the case right now. The case right now is it's not, and it's at town hall. So this was dealt with the same as every subdivision and everything else.
Correct, and if I may.
Also in that notice, it is stated that additional information is available at the authorized ordinance. In the notice. If anybody wanted additional information, they would know.
No, I just want to add something to Mike.
The Commissioner, as soon as he's going to finish his comment, then we go to Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah, after hearing the clarification from staff and after looking at the notice of public hearing, I think it's sufficient to put the public on notice of the substance of what we were going to talk about, and they were also notified of their ability to get more information. I think that's what is important, so we have fulfilled.
So anyone here who's worried about whether there was, I'm sorry,
Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question it was properly noticed. One thing I see that I pointed out that was a little different than before, that even actually, maybe we could have not done it. We try to reproduce the entire section to show where this fit in. Usually we just take this section is to be added, or these words are to be added to this section bolded, so it's a shorter type thing that can be handed out with just what we're doing. This is probably too much what we've got here, but I don't think there's any question that it was legally noticed and that this is available to people. I was actually, because we were kind of working on it, this was a working document, we were working on the entire section, so drop it in here, but really, a lot of this is not necessary other than context. Like for this thing, we're proposing adding the bold text, that's what
Yeah. One last thing.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobson hasn't gone yet, and then to my right.
I would not support holding the hearing open. I think we've been working on this for a year and a half. Every meeting has been noticed. This meeting was noticed. The legal requirements were met, and I think we should close the public hearing.
Commissioner,
What? I'm sorry.
She thinks we should close the public hearing, she said. Commissioner Wagner.
So I just want to clarify, I don't believe that there was any defect in the notice, all right? I believe my comments are solely based on the testimony, the comments we heard from the public tonight. In the past, we have taken that into consideration. I don't believe that a one-time holding this open for further consideration and comment by the public is, too much of an ask. And it's, I think, would go a long way towards, you know, proving up our transparency and you know, our not to make it seem like we're trying to, you know, run something through, you know, simply because folks weren't coming to the planning meetings. So, you know, I think it would go a long way to, you know, public support of our action by holding the meeting open.
Commissioner Canali?
One last thing. I respect Commissioner Wagner's concern about making sure that whatever decision we make is a legitimate one in the eyes of the public. So I want to make clear that I think that's a reasonable point of view. And I think that anyone here holds that, it's absolutely reasonable. My concern, and while I became perhaps a little emotional about this, is that if I was an outsider viewing this, I'd be worried to a certain extent about a little bit about fundamental fairness here. What I mean is this, and this is not to impugn, I mean, I want to make clear, is I absolutely think that we don't want to make anything seem like it's railroaded. That's not the idea. But I would just argue in the name of fundamental fairness. When you know, this process is certainly must be open, but it must be fair. It must be fair to all parties. How do I say? I want to say this in an appropriate way. When the average homeowner or property owner comes before us, you know, we listen to them. But at a certain point, if we feel we've heard a reasonable description of the views and we've noticed fairly, we close our hearing and we move on with deliberation. And my concern is simply, does the average individual, do they have this feeling that they are treated by us in the same way when perhaps, you know, government entities that may represent certain elements within our community step in, or prominent citizens who are well known and respected within our, you know, business community step in and ask for these kinds of this kind of an ask, and that's what my worry is. I'm comfortable that we have been open and transparent. I'm comfortable that we have been deliberative. What I'm not comfortable with is a worry that the average Joe will look at this, the average Fairfielder will say, wait a minute, if this were me, I wouldn't be able to extend this, but here, prominent individuals in our business community decided this would be something to do. So that's my concern.
So, Mr. Chairman, I feel the need to respond to that directly, and I take umbrage and offense to the notion that I am taking the position that I am because notable members of the community have come before us to ask for an extension. I have advocated for transparency and extensions of public hearings when ordinary citizens, having complained that they didn't receive notice, they were away on vacation or whatever, that they should have an opportunity for an extension. I think that there's a limit. It wasn't just one person who made that request tonight, and I can't believe that you would characterize the request the way you have.
Just so I can clarify, I'm not accusing. I'm not accusing Commissioner Wagner of anything. I think, as I started by saying, I think that your concern about this issue of openness is genuine. So I wish you wouldn't take umbrage. I purposely wanted to avoid umbrage taking by you, but okay. All I'm saying is just to wrap it up, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you. But I would just say to you that I think that this is a process that has been open and fair, that we've had significant deliberation, and I think to begin slicing off pieces of this at the kind of special request of individuals is what de facto is happening here. And I think it serves the Commission's reputation for ultimately for equal treatment for all well. And that is not saying that Mr. Wagner somehow is not for that. He is absolutely called for public hearings on those situations where somebody wasn't. But I'm just saying I think that this is what it looks like to me.
Any further discussion or comment from anyone in the Commission? That being said, I've heard your comments, Commissioners. I've heard the public's comments. I've heard our discussions over the last year on this topic and on these topics, and I know we will deliberate. The issues raised tonight are issues we've considered, and we have to make a decision on it. We have discussed before we put these on paper so that we can have a vote one way or the other as to whether we want to make these changes or not. That being said, I will now close the public hearing on this item and move on to the next item. The next item is 455 Pine Creek Avenue, special permit application of Robert and Nancy Strong for excavation and fill in the Beach District, and that is under section 24 of our regulations. Mr. Fowle.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm representing Brian and Nancy Strong. They're seated right here. And with us tonight is Mike Bertula from the Huntington Company, who I'll introduce in a moment. Just to give you a little background.
I hate to interrupt you in the beginning, but I always do.
Yes.
And you're used to it, so. We have somewhat of a riddle posed to us, I think, by Ms. Pooley in her memo. I'm hoping that maybe you can address this. There's a statement made that along the northwest corner of the property, the grade should be lowered in a way that will allow the southwest corner of the Strong property to drain onto 455 Pine Creek Avenue, which I think is the site of the application. And I can't get the northwest to drain onto the southwest. Something's got to be wrong in that. We're all confused. I'm sure we're all confused about that.
Mr. Bertula will address that.
So if you could maybe explain it.
Mr. Bertula will address that.
Own, and I believe they're contract owners.
Yeah, let me give you the background, then we'll call him Mr. Bertula. He'll review with you what we have and address the request or the matter with regard to Ms. Pooley's comments. Brian and Nancy are here. They own the property and resided for some time at 433 Pine Creek Avenue, which immediately abuts this property, which is owned by the Loper Estate.
And where's that on your map? If you could show us where they reside now on the
Mike?
plan. Mr. Bertula, I'm sorry, show us.
Oops, sorry,
All right, the subject property is 455 Pine Creek, and that is owned by the Loper Estate. The immediately adjacent property, point to that again, please, Mike.
Just to the north.
Is just to the north, and that is owned by the Strongs. The Strongs have a contract, they are contract purchasers of the property at 455 Pine Creek Avenue. They would...
Mr. Brown, this is 455 then, this is all 455.
This is 455, this is the subject property, it's owned by the estate of Loper. The Strongs live here.
And their property borders the entire side.
It does indeed. 433, they've lived here for many years. They have a contract to purchase this property from the Lopers. They don't really have a present intention to build a house or anything on it, but because it was available, because they've lived here for so many years, and because they would like to control it and have it, they are contracted to purchase it, subject to the process that we're going through tonight. What is the process? The process is a permit under Section 24 of your regulations, the purpose of which, and I'll introduce Mike in a second, is to address current drainage deficiencies on the property by a process of regrading and improvements to the drainage on the site. So I'm going to ask Michael to come forward now, briefly overview for you the current site conditions at 455, what our proposal is tonight for regrading and improvement to the drainage design. And he will also address Laura Pooley's comments. By way of Laura's comments, and I'll have a few other housekeeping items at the conclusion of his remarks, we have no objection to any of her recommendations, but we understand from the comments that we need to all understand by way of clarification that one point she's referring to. So I'm going to ask Mike to talk about the current site conditions, our proposal before you for regrading and improvement to the drainage, and then Michael, if you will, also address Laura's comments and specifically, and here is her memo, specifically the clarification that the chair requested.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Michael Paterla, licensed land surveyor and engineer in the state of Connecticut. Also a member of the Huntington Company office here in Fairfield. Some of the things Attorney Fallon already told you. There's an existing lot that sits between Pine Creek and Pine Creek Avenue. On the north is where the Strongs live, and there's also an existing house to our south. There's public water, public sewers available in this neighborhood. On the lot, there's an existing garage. Its use, I don't know, it's probably used for storage or some boating equipment. Again, I'm not 100% sure. There's a dock on the other side of the berm here. The present elevation is the depressed area, the low-lying area. If you look at the existing conditions map up by the Strong's property, the elevations range from just under 7, 6'8", 6'7", and on the south, about the same thing on the Dunes property, about 6'8", 7'5". In the middle of the property, the subject property, we've got, it goes down to elevation 4.1, and if you could notice, I could outline it just a little bit, there's a pocket in here during heavy rains that collects the water, and the only outlet is the water percolates after a period of time. Okay? So this big area ponds water. What Mr. Strong and his wife would like to do is purchase this lot in order to enjoy its use, to fill it to just below what the current properties on either side are. If we look at the proposed conditions map, we start from the just about elevation 7 on the existing dike, and rather than the water come down towards Pine Creek and pond at elevation 4.5 thereabouts, we're going to take elevation 7 and come down to elevation 6 out.
Sorry.
What we plan to do is construct a depression. We have about a 3-foot depression in the ground. It's a slight swale, and because this won't be enough to collect all the stormwater, I've got a series of underground concrete chambers, stormwater recharge chambers. We use them in houses and buildings, and they're 8 foot long, 4 foot wide, and only 18 inches high. In this case, I propose 18 of them. They'll be tied into this depression. In order to prevent any water from going to the southerly property owner, I propose a swale that goes down the side and into this ponding area. On top of that, I also propose a swale here to get the water into this depressed area. I ran calculations from the 2-year storm all the way up to the 100-year storm. There's no increase in runoff. There's also no increase up to the 50-year storm into elevation in height of the stormwater. The height of the proposed 100-year storm will be 4.92, so anything below 5 is where the 100-year storm will pond, and it's well below the elevations on either side of the subject property.
Yes, one could argue we just had a 100-year storm, but what kind of ponding did the property experience?
It was my understanding, and again, I didn't check 100% with Laura Pooley in the engineering department, the amount of rain we had was very minimal. I had to figure it, unfortunately, I left it on my desk also, but it was well under an inch. And that's, you know, it was just the tides and the winds that caused so much of the problem.
The tides get to that property,
Yeah.
it's very close to the water.
My understanding, again, I didn't visit this section during the storm, but I was told that the dikes the water swelled up to the dikes. Oh, okay.
What is the... Mr. Materlo, if I'm correct, a 100-year storm, we did not have a 100-year storm.
That's correct.
A 100-year storm measures rainfall coming down.
That's correct.
We had a hurricane or whatever we're going to call
That's right.
it. That's that which may have
Different.
raised tide elevations. That's different than a 100-year
Different story,
storm,
yeah.
so we're clear.
Just for instance, a 100-year storm in a 24-hour period would produce 7.2 inches of rain, which is a lot of rain.
Can I ask what the elevation is there from the water side?
Oh, down at the water, well, the high water mark is 3.2, okay? And the dike, the top of the dike is elevation 10, okay? And then again, once we get over the dike, the dike is a big earthen berm. I think it was the late 60s or 70s is when the construction took place to the whole neighborhood. So this acts as the dam for Pine Creek. And again, I was told that when the water swelled up, it didn't breach it. But again, Mr. Strong, who lives here, will give testimony to what happened.
Just before Michael addresses Laura's comments, I should have said at the beginning, to make these improvements to the drainage by way of both the regrading and the improved drainage system, Michael just said, we're not talking about a huge amount of flow.
No.
As I point out in my statement of use, we're here because it's approximately 400 cubic yards. So it's not, I didn't want to give the impression that there's mountains of fill coming in here. But it's sufficient regrading to allow that deposit to be brought up to the elevation of the surrounding properties. Michael, could you also review Laura's memo, which I gave you, and with specific reference to the chair's comments
Sure.
at the beginning, just to clarify if
Yep.
you understand what
Yep.
she's saying?
Last Thursday,
Whatever she's saying, though,
Yep. We agreed to do.
As soon as you understand what it is.
Well, I hope so. Michael's been...
Last Thursday, I stopped in to see Laura. It's my opinion, it's always better to see her in person rather than via email or telephone. Her concerns were very minor.
Hold on, Mr. Paterlo, 1 second. We have an audio issue. Okay, thank you.
What she wanted was a little more specific on my pipe that connects my underground stormwater chambers and this depressed area. She wanted elevations. She wanted invert elevations. Simple thing to do. Okay, that was one. Other thing was the wording how she put the regrading. She just wanted me to change my grading where I have this elevation 6.5 wrapping around the front. She wanted me just to make this berm do this and take this 6 and come this way, just so any waters here, rather than flow towards the street, would get into this depressed area.
Are you making that depressed area?
Yes.
So when she says along the northwest corner of the property, 455,
Right here.
the grade should be lowered.
Yes.
That's
just these couple lines I drew. It's that simple. She wants this water, rather than, I had this water, just a small area going towards the street. She wanted me to change the grading, so this would now go into here.
And that's going to allow the southwest corner of the Strong property to continue to drain?
This is southwest of Strong property. So this will go this way, into this thing.
Okay. She's referring to Strong, okay.
Strong.
She's referring to the other Strong
right.
property at that point,
Yes.
not 455.
Okay.
Okay.
And what it'll eliminate, and that was what Mr. Strong was going to say, is, especially during the wintertime when the ground freezes, the property becomes a skating rink, which is an amenity some people might like, but the Strongs would prefer just to have a yard. And so that's really what we're doing here.
Right.
Okay?
And another thing Laura mentioned was, because this is almost 4 feet within 20 feet of a roadway, she wanted us to put guard posts, and we've no problems with that. That's in the subdivision regulation. That's pretty straightforward. Again, as Attorney Fallon said, what exists now, if we get during heavy rains, this big skating pond in the winter or in the springtime, we get this puddle here. What we would like to do is take that water, put some in stormwater chambers, and have a collection area this big rather than that whole area there. And as you see, Laura reviewed the computations and came up with just what I thought were 4 reasonable, simple comments, which we, agree to take care of this.
Thank you, Michael. One other housekeeping...
I think Mr. Wagner has a
I'm
question.
sorry.
Mr. Paterlo.
So if you already have a ponding on the,
Existing, yeah.
and you got the stormwater chambers, right, along the basin, why couldn't you just direct the water into the recharge chambers from the other side of the property? Why fill and move all the water over to that side to come in the other way? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, because of this berm, okay, I needed a place to collect water, you know, a depressed area, or else this whole yard would have been filled with concrete chambers, okay? So we took this depressed area, made a smaller one in front, regraded the lot so we could have it just below, rather than 2.5 feet below the Strong's property, so you'd have more use, more enjoyment of the properties together. So this water's going to flow down, get into this collection area, swell into here, and in addition, swell into the stormwater chambers.
Sure, and I'm not frankly questioning your engineering at all, but I'm wondering why you couldn't just take the water that's collecting naturally right now on the other side, and connect it to the recharge chambers that you've got at the bottom of the property.
Because we wanted to fill this, so this yard would be more or less contiguous in the same elevation.
We didn't want it to.
We didn't want this big belly in the middle of this property, in this empty lot.
So that's somewhat cosmetic.
Yeah, we wanted it to look like, you know, this is going to be used in unison, you know.
Right now, this is a soup bowl. This is a soup bowl.
So we want it to look like a lawn area. But at the same time, we could affect some drainage improvements.
Mr. Mitchell, is there a reason you couldn't just take the water, put it through a biofiltration system and put it out into Pine Creek? You've got the elevations for that, right?
To Pine Creek, no. The elevation at the top of the dike is 10.
Not over the top, I mean through. Can't you
Well,
go through
we
it?
didn't want, it's very dangerous to breach an earthen berm, an earthen dike, especially this one. It's been since the late 60s, early 70s. If during brand new construction, there's plenty of ways we could do it. Is it impossible? No. Is it a good idea? In my opinion, it's not. And I think if you ask your engineering department, they would agree. It would just make where we put the outlet pipe through that earthen berm more susceptible for failure.
And as the record indicates, Ms. Pooley did review this, and, you know, she's very comfortable with it. Mr. Suter?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is exactly what happened in the Johnstown flood, isn't it?
You mean if you breach the...
There was an earthen berm, and it was breached, and the pipes went through the berm. I gave way.
Mr. Jacobs?
This sounds very reasonable to me. My question or concerns both. One would be what's going to be in the future if you're proposing a whole nother house there. As a yard, it looks wonderful. The other part of it is, as it is, it makes sense. The idea makes sense. Now, my question would also be, with a tidal surge, nothing on it, it's fine because the water will rise. It's graded, the water will go away. Did you have a problem with the tidal surge at the last storm? No?
No, I asked them that one. The answer is they did not.
And if there's nothing on it, to me, there's not a problem because the water will rise and the water will go away. It's when you put something on it that creates a whole nother issue.
It's a building lot. The Strongs know that. They don't have a present intention of developing it. If and when they or their heirs or whatever were going to develop it, it's going to have to go through a whole new analysis of both, you know, drainage design, drainage review, and so on. But that's really not what their intention of buying the property is now. As long as you mention that, though, it leads into one bit of, I think, important housekeeping. Mr. Dune is here, who I've spoken with, and he is an abutting neighbor. I want to just give you some material, and as I do, I'll pass it out. It came to our attention, through Mr. Dune, actually, that when this lot was approved, and what I'm giving you now, the first page, is the minutes of a ZBA meeting in 1979 approving the lot. The second page is a map I'll talk about in a minute. But if you look at the minutes
which are the one that's circled, application 7633. That was the approval. That was the approval of this lot, Assessor's Map 234, Parcel 230, that leads to it being a valid building lot. And you'll note condition number 1, that those were struck down in court decisions years later. But condition 2, that an easement be provided for access to Alice Dune's garage, and a map be filed in the land records providing for adequate maneuverability, subject to approval by the zoning enforcement officer. Well, the map didn't get recorded. The second page, if you turn to it, is in 1982, and I didn't give you the whole map, and I can if you want to. There was an application that was made for development of this lot by some folks by the name of Garamella. They never went through with it, but they did get approved. And if you look at the portion of the map that I gave you, and it's only the portion, you'll see, in accordance with the requirement, they did reserve an easement in favor of Alice Dune. And it does cross a little corner of the subject property. So Mr. Dune called me up after he saw this in the paper, and he said, "Where's my easement?" And I went to my title search, and I said, "Gee, you don't have one." And then Mr. Dune said, "Look what I have here." And I said, "Well, Mr. Dune, you got an easement." So I told him, Mr. Strong and Mrs. Strong are here. I've spoken to Attorney Antonucci of Shine Julienel, who is the attorney for the Lower Estate. And I told Mr. Dune I would make a record statement that if the condition of approval of this application would be the documentation of an easement consistent with the original approval in 1979, consistent with the dimensions on this map, which I think is exactly what was called for. Normally, you don't involve yourselves with easements and things of that nature, but when it references back to a condition of approval established in the lot, I think it's appropriate you do so, and that way the Dunes will know that moving forward, something that really should have been cleaned up, not their fault, but that should have been done 40 years ago, will finally get on the land.
Does that change your design at all?
No, not at all. Because if you look, that's what, it's in this little corner of the lot.
Can you show us where that is on the large map? Just
Michael.
Charlie. It's right.
It's right there.
Yeah. It's right that corner, that little corner right there. There.
Right there. Okay, so I just wanted to, I told Mr. Dune I'd make that a record statement.
We have it right here.
Very good, Jacob.
A real important part on this will be, is this staying as a separate lot, or is this being combined with the Strong's house? We've had these issues come up before. Is a lot combined? Is it?
No. We'll maintain it. It's an approved building lot under this 79 approval, and we'll maintain it for legal purposes as a building lot. For purposes of, for the foreseeable future of use and enjoyment, it'll be used by the Strongs, but we will maintain it as a separate building lot. And again, if and when the day ever comes that we want to build something on it, that's going to require a whole review appropriate to a construction on a property like this. But for now, we just want to regrade it, as you've heard tonight, improve the drainage, make it level with our yard and the yard next to it, and as a byproduct of that, we'll finally take care of the Dunes easement.
Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Fallon, you're here tonight just because of the section 24, the grading.
Right, it requires it.
Yeah, if we had 248 feet and we looked at that, we wouldn't have to be here, but we figured we wanted to do it correctly, and that's why we're here. It's the only thing we're here for, the grading.
I know you just said it, but could you just summarize the benefits that will... I'm sorry. Can you just go through the benefits that the Strongs or the property owners will achieve by these improvements to the property, and just, the rationale for doing so now? We heard about the ponding and elimination of the skating rink. And
Right. I mean, right now, the purpose of the application, as I said at the beginning, is to address the current drainage deficiencies on the subject lot. Those drainage deficiencies have been outlined by Mr. Bertula, but they basically, we have a bowl situation so that water, especially in wintertime, just sits there, it'll freeze over, it is unsightly, it probably has some safety issues, it's doing nothing good for water quality. so that we seek to improve all those things by way of the regrading, and then Michael's, I think, fairly elaborate for a vacant lot, drainage system that will basically better detain and handle, and at the same time ensure that there'll be no improper increases in runoff. The other benefit, Mr. Barrett, is aesthetics, because by doing this, the Strongs will be able to have a lot that, in terms of its topography and elevation, is consistent with their lot, consistent with the lot next to it, and will be much more sightly than what you have now. So those are the two things. Improvement to a really deficient drainage situation and aesthetic improvement for the enjoyment of the lot in conjunction with 433.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment? You don't have
I'd like to hear.
My name is Stuart June. I have the interest in the property next door and just the easement that I was granted before, or my aunt was granted, that I didn't seem to find recorded in a manner that I thought was correct. Would just like to state that what has been proposed seems to be the way to do it, and if not, if somebody could tell me how I should be doing it, I shall. Or
Apart from the easement, do you have any objection to the plan as proposed?
not particularly, though it does seem to be a bit overboard for drainage, but if that's what's required now, if you do put fill in to begin with, you have to put all this in with it. I would think that if you just raise it up to a common level, the water will go through by itself because it has no place to pool. Now you're giving it a new place to pool and putting it into here to dribble down into the ground. Seems a little complicated to me, but I'm not an engineer. Other than that, I think I'm through.
Thank you, Mr. June.
Okay.
I explained to Mr. June what we would do.
Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak? Hearing none, Mr. Bell.
I explained to Mr. Dune, I couldn't give him legal advice because I represent the Strongs, and I will, when we prepare the documents for the easement, I'll probably suggest that he has a lawyer look at it. But, you know, that I told him what we would do is, as you would normally do, we'll prepare an easement document. That easement document will reference a map. The map will be similar to the old Garamella map. It'll show his easement, and both the easement and the Mylar map will get recorded on the land records.
Thank you. There being nothing further, I'll close the public hearing. I'm sorry, Mr. June, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. June, yes.
Purpose for the easement is for the ingress, egress of a garage.
This is correct,
I don't know if you want to see pictures and diagrams of that.
I think we actually have a map, sir. If you want to take a look at this map Mr. Fallon has, the garage is on it.
Yeah.
On your property.
Okay.
Right over here, sir. This is your garage right there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, we have that map, and it's been indicated on the record
so-
that this is the easement area that's been colored in green that I'm pointing to.
Correct. It's...
Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, it's indicated in that manner, other than there's nothing that says it like the map that I've got.
What we'll do is we'll make that map that you pointed to as part of the record. We'll ask that Mr. Fallon leave that map.
This is the full Garamella map, so this is fine. This is, I didn't give you the whole map because it was in pieces, but this is the map I gave you. And so that's, but if you want to have the full map, maybe...
We should have something for the record. We can use this map where we just...
What I gave you is the same as the map that Mr. Dugan has. It's just the portion that shows
I think Mr. Dune was just trying to confirm on something where the easement is going.
If you'll let you submit the whole map, then you'll have the whole map.
That's fine. Would you like to let us have that map? Mr. Dune is, for the record, giving me the map grading plan for Catherine G. Garamella, Fairfield, Connecticut, November 10, 1980. And it indicates an easement area on the southwest side of the property now known as 455 Pine Creek Avenue. Labeled easement in favor of Alice Dune, and Mr. Fallon will indicate for the record that is the area where the easement is going to be placed.
What I handed you, ladies and gentlemen, just because I had it in pieces, was this portion of that map.
Right.
I have the full map. And what Mr. Petula, for the record, noted in green on the main map, which you can keep here, is exactly that triangulated sliver, which will be the portion of the 455 property that will be the subject of the easement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dune.
And you should be able to get this on an MP3 now.
We have that. nothing further, I will close the hearing on this matter, and there being nothing further on the agenda, we stand in adjournment. Happy holidays.